Chapter 413. Fong Yuan slowly opened his eyes. Everything in front of him was a blurry pink color, and when his vision cleared up, he saw a veil curtain. A light breeze blew, the wind chimes rang, and the pink curtain fluttered like a dream. Fong Yuan sat up from the bed. This bed was round and extremely spacious, it could easily fit 40 to 50 people. The bed was covered with a red silk blanket with golden edges, it was warm and fitting. Fong Yuan looked around and found himself in a spacious bedroom. Beside the bed, there was a burning cauldron, burning spices. In the air, there was a subtle fragrance that could stir one's emotions. This bedroom had golden bricks on the walls and silver bricks on the floor. The bed, the corner, the table, the chair and the dressing table were inlaid with large amounts of pearls, agates, diamonds and all kinds of precious stones. It was resplendent, luxurious and elegant, emitting the aura of the previous owner, Hu Immortal. This was Hu Immortal's Dang Hun Palace. It is a gentle place. Fong Yuan lightly commented, getting off the bed. His body unconsciously swayed, and there was still some dizziness in his head. Fong Yuan did not find it strange, instead, he knew, this was because he had squeezed himself too hard on San Cha Mountain. By Ning Bing's betrayal, being pressured by the group of experts, and even scheming against the land spirit, first refining second aperture goo, and then refining fixed immortal travel goo in the light waterfall. During the whole process, he had to bear the mental pressure of taking a huge risk. To Fong Yuan, be it his body or his mind, they had reached their limits. When he used fixed immortal travel goo to reach the peak of Dang Hun Mountain, Feng Kim Hong and Fong Jing were at the end of their tether, but wasn't he, Fong Yuan, the same? Compared to them, Fong Yuan's mental pressure was even greater. Spring-autumn cicada could not be used a second time, and snatching Hu Immortal's inheritance in front of the 10 sex Gu Immortals was like pulling a tooth out of a tiger's mouth. Pulling chestnuts out of the fire was extremely risky. Fong Yuan was the first to reach the peak, and the land spirit chased away the other competitors. After Fong Yuan officially became the ruler of the Blessed Land, he immediately ordered the land spirit to close the entire Blessed Land. After instructing the land spirit on a few important points, the environment became stable and Fong Yuan relaxed, falling asleep immediately. I don't know how long I slept this time. Fong Yuan shook his head. He still felt very tired. A sense of weakness came from the depths of his soul. At the same time, his ears were constantly buzzing, and his brain was obviously sluggish. Thinking was much more difficult than usual. Not good, my soul is injured. Fong Yuan's heart sank. He realized that his condition wasn't good. The main reason was the refinement of immortal goo. How could immortal goo be so easy to cultivate? Many Gu Immortals were careless during the refinement and suffered backlash, some were injured while others died. Fong Yuan could refine immortal Gu with a mortal body. The main reason was that the secret technique was good, and it originated from the legends of Renzu. Secondly, the materials were good. He mainly used divine travel Gu. From another perspective, it was the same as turning divine travel Gu into fixed immortal travel Gu. This greatly reduced the difficulty. It wasn't like Fong Yuan's previous life, where he used large numbers of mortal Gu to refine immortal Gu spring-autumn cicada. Becoming an immortal as a mortal. The difficulty was 100 times higher. Even so, my soul foundation is too shallow, my soul was still injured. But thankfully, this is Dang Hun Mountain. Thinking of this, Fong Yuan's expression turned solemn. He softly called, "Where is the land spirit?" Swoosh! Hu Immortal land spirit suddenly appeared in front of him. Thinking of this, Fong Yuan could not help but think of an important question. Land spirit, how long is it until the next earthly calamity? Master, even if you did not ask, I would have reported it to you. Currently, the Blessed Land has already experienced 5 earthly calamities, there is only 1 year and 3 months left until the 6th. Hu Immortal's tone was anxious and grave. What? Only 1 year and 3 months left. Fong Yuan could not sit still anymore, he stood up from the bed. His expression was gloomy. All living beings were balanced, heaven was fair. There were strong and weak, there were blessings and calamities. Blessed lands had calamities and tribulations, an earthly calamity every 10 years, and a heavenly tribulation every 100 years. Not mentioning the heavenly tribulation, just the earthly calamity alone. Once an earthly calamity occurred, its power was vast, it would often cause heaven and earth to shatter. Once the blessed land could not resist it, it would be destroyed. Feng Yuan had a blessed land in his previous life. He could not be clearer about the severity of the situation. To a blessed land, every earthly calamity was a severe test. Each earthly calamity was stronger than the last, who immortal died in the 5th earthly calamity, while Feng Yuan would face the even stronger 6th earthly calamity. It is only 1 year and 3 months away from the earthly calamity. There is only 1 year and 3 months left. Why was it not mentioned in the biography of Feng Kim Hong? That's right, Feng Kim Hong is a disciple of Spirit Affinity House, his parents are Gu immortals, with their help, it is not difficult to resist the earthly calamity. But to me, the situation is extremely bad. The 6th earthly calamity came too quickly. Even though Feng Yuan had rich experience, he did not have the time to make sufficient preparations. Besides this, he still had to be on guard against external enemies. I snatched to immortal blessed land in front of everyone's eyes. Even though the 10 sects did not make a move, they are definitely watching from the outside. I understand now, these 10 sects Gu immortals are holding back because they know the earthly calamity is approaching. They want to make use of this earthly calamity. With the arrival of the earthly calamity, the land spirit naturally had to go all out. It could not take care of its master. Feng Yuan was currently at rank 4 upper stage, he could be easily targeted. Once Feng Yuan died, the blessed land would be ownerless, the land spirit would have to choose a new master. If the earthly calamity created a huge loophole, outside Gu masters could freely enter and exit this place. If the 10 sects made trouble at that time, it would be one disaster after another, making the situation even more dangerous. Feng Yuan's gaze flickered for a while, because his soul was injured, his head was aching from thinking about it. He stopped his chaotic thoughts and let out a breath of turbid air, finally deciding, let's look at the situation first. He would do his best to make preparations to resist the earthly calamity. If he failed, he could only abandon Hu immortal blessed land and make it self-destruct, not leaving any resources for the righteous path, before using fixed immortal travel Gu to retreat. Although the blessed land was good, how could it compare to his own safety? After making up his mind, Feng Yuan instructed the land spirit to bring him out to take a look, he urgently needed to understand this blessed land. Yes. The land spirit lowered its head and replied obediently, before hesitantly adding, Master, do you not like to wear clothes? In fact, wearing a nice set of clothes will make you look very energetic, and you will feel inexplicably happy. Feng Yuan could not wear the clothes in Dang Hun Palace. But thankfully, he had a spare set of clothes in his Tusita flower. Chapter 4:14. Feng Yuan heard this and asked, then how many Gu are there in this blessed land now? Hu immortal land spirit slightly raised its head, right now, there are over 860,000 rank 1 Gu, involving 52 types. Over 130,000 rank 2 Gu, 48 types. 5,000 rank 3 Gu, 12 types. Over 60 rank 4 Gu, 8 types. And 1 rank 5 Gu, fox skin Gu. Back then, after Hu immortal died, her obsession did not dissipate and combined with the heavenly power of this land, forming this mystical existence known as the land spirit. In a sense, it was a continuation of life. Thus, the land spirit was the representative of this blessed land, and knew everything in the blessed land clearly. Now that Feng Yuan was the owner of the blessed land, everything in the blessed land belonged to Feng Yuan. Over 860,000 rank 1 Gu, and 130,000 rank 2 Gu, these two added up to nearly 1,000,000 Gu worms. Feng Yuan could not help but think of his time on Qingmao Mountain, when he schemed and fought for 2 or 3 rank 1 and 2 Gu worms. Blessed lands were created by Gu immortals after all, it was the foundation of immortals. Just this Hu immortal blessed land was enough to support a super clan. 5 or 6 small-sized clans like Guyua village would not be a problem here. As for the number of Gu worms in the Blessed Land, at rank 3, their numbers decreased sharply. There were less than 100 rank 4 Gu, and only 1 rank 5 Gu, fox skin Gu. This kind of situation was also natural. Just like Gu masters. Rank 1 and 2 Gu masters were very common, rank 3 Gu masters were rare, rank 4 Gu masters were even rarer. As for rank 5 Gu masters, there were only 1 or 2 in a million people. This was a pyramid distribution, the higher it was, the fewer Gu worms there were. Only an extremely small number of Gu worms occupied the top. This blessed land is still young. If it is managed properly in the future, the number of Gu worms will continue to increase. Over 10 million rank 1 and 2 Gu. It is not a difficult matter. But whether they are raised well or not depends on the type and number of rank 4 and 5 Gu. Fang Yuan calculated. When mortals raised Gu, they usually only had 5 or 6 Gu. When Gu immortals raised Gu, they would raise millions or even tens of millions. The difference between the two was like the difference between heaven and earth. Right now, these Gu in Hu immortal blessed land could only be considered passable. Firstly, there were only about 1 million of them. Secondly, they were not specialized in species. Fang Yuan listened to the land spirit's introduction. They were all ordinary goods. If it was the liquor worm or breath concealment Gu, the value would be huge. Even that rank 5 fox skin Gu was an extremely ordinary defensive Gu. They were effective in defending against wind and water path Gu worms, but they could not deal with complex battle situations. They were of little value. Fang Yuan wasn't even interested in looking at it. What truly moved him were the resources of the universe. In Hu immortal blessed land, time flowed 5 times faster than the outside world. In other words, 1 day in the outside world was equivalent to 5 days in here. This meant that Fang Yuan's cultivation speed in the paradise was 5 times faster than the outside world. 3 months in the outside world. That was 1 year and 3 months in the blessed land. With this, Fang Yuan would be able to cultivate quickly and surpass even more Gu masters, gaining more opportunities. Of course, there were also major drawbacks to this. Fang Yuan's lifespan was only about 100 years. Thus, the speed at which he aged increased by 5 times. The land spirit continued to introduce. Right now, there are thousands of fox groups living in the blessed land. There are red foxes, golden foxes, cloud foxes, wind foxes, autumn water foxes, flowing light foxes and so on. Among them, there are 3 largest myriad fox groups. They each have about 800,000 foxes. The total number of foxes is about 4,700,000. Fang Yuan listened quietly, nodding slightly. 3 myriad fox groups meant there were 3 myriad beast kings. In Hu immortal blessed land, the beast groups had not developed to the stage of having beast emperors. The beast groups had a simple structure. From bottom to top, there were 100 beast kings, 1,000 beast kings, myriad beast kings and beast emperors. For example, Ba Huang and Ing Ming in 3 Kings blessed land were 2 beast emperors with battle strength comparable to rank 5 Gu masters. They could temporarily block Mo Wu Tian and Xiao Mang's advance. There are many fox groups, but they are all ordinary foxes. There are no mutated beasts. Fang Yuan evaluated inwardly. The value of ordinary wild beasts naturally could not compare to mutated beasts. This was like wild boar and thunder boar, green bull and Kunlun bull, wild dog and lion mastiff. Above mutated beasts, there were desolate beasts. Among the desolate beasts, there were ancient desolate beasts and immemorial desolate beasts. Song Zixing's violent blood dragon bat was an ancient desolate beast. It was one of the 9 true inheritances left behind by Blood Sea ancestor. Immemorial desolate beasts were recorded in the legends of Renzu, for example, the 9-tailed fox. To nurture a 9-tailed fox in Hu immortal blessed land, that is definitely a fantasy. Even ancient desolate beasts cannot do it. But for ordinary desolate beasts like hurricane fox or phoenix wing fox, it would be a great fortune to nurture 1 or 2. Fang Yuan considered inwardly. Since he had obtained Who Immortal Blessed Land, his rebirth plan could be said to have reached a whole new level. He naturally had to make adjustments and modifications. At this time, Jia clan's internal strife was already in full swing. He could not make it in time. The Battle of Etian Mountain was too far away. Feng Yuan was prepared to make good use of this Who Immortal Blessed Land and cultivate to Gu Immortal Realm. This meant that he not only had to resist the successive earthly calamities, he also had to manage them. Currently, the Gu groups were barely satisfactory. Although the Fox groups were ordinary, they had the potential to develop. Actually, there are a lot of Fox groups in the Blessed Land. At least 3 times as many as now. But during the second earthly calamity, there was a meteor fire rain. The eastern part of the Blessed Land was burnt to a pulp. That time, hundreds of thousands of foxes were burned to death. Even now, the black flames are not extinguished. The fourth earthly calamity was a flood that drowned most of the grassland in the northern part of the Blessed Land, killing a large number of fox groups. The situation was much worse than he had imagined. Who Immortal Blessed Land was already on the brink of destruction, be it internal or external threats. They were all very serious. To Feng Kim Hong, she had Gu Immortal parents and Spirit Affinity House's help. She naturally did not need to worry about these things. But Feng Yuan was alone. Of course, being alone had its own benefits. Biography of Feng Kim Hong recorded that even if Feng Kim Hong obtained a blessed land, she had to contribute a large amount of resources to the sect. The land spirit shook her head. The worst situation had already been reported. The rest were all good news. Firstly, in the southern part of the Blessed Land, there was a Rockman tribe. Rockmen were a type of variant humans. They lived underground and ate ores as food. This news was an unexpected surprise to Feng Yuan. Secondly, the Gu Immortal Blessed Land had abundant immortal essence. The land spirit brought Feng Yuan back to Dang Hun Palace. In the deepest part of the palace, there was a huge golden bowl filled with green immortal essence. Other than the green liquid at the bottom of the bowl, most of the immortal essence had automatically condensed into lumps. At first glance, they looked like grapes. This was the unique attribute of a rank 6 Gu Immortal, Green Grape Immortal Essence. Each Green Grape Immortal Essence bead had more immortal essence than the 3 Kings' Blessed Land. Chapter 4:15. Feng Yuan counted carefully. There were 78 beads of Green Grape Immortal Essence in the golden bowl. Adding the layer of green immortal liquid at the bottom of the bowl, there were 78.5 beads. The abundance of immortal essence was 100 times that of 3 Kings' Blessed Land. Feng Yuan immediately took out a bead of Green Grape Immortal Essence and held it in his hand, then willed and summoned Fixed Immortal Travel Gu. Fixed Immortal Travel Gu was like a jade butterfly that was meticulously carved. It was exquisite and beautiful as it slowly flew over. Feng Yuan's face turned pale, his whole body trembled, cold sweat poured out of his body, and his vision darkened. If not for his hand holding onto the side of the golden bowl, he would have fallen down. Master, be careful. Your soul is heavily injured. Don't summon the immortal Gu, otherwise you will fall unconscious again. Little Who Immortal called out, her tone anxious and her gaze concerned. No worries, I have confidence. Feng Yuan gritted his teeth and waved his hand, slowly opening his palm towards Fixed Immortal Travel Gu. Fixed Immortal Travel Gu smelled the Green Grape Immortal Essence and immediately flapped its wings, gliding in the air for a while before landing on Feng Yuan's palm. Next, it laid on the Green Grape Immortal Essence and slowly absorbed it. Fixed Immortal Travel Gu's name contained the word immortal. It was not without reason. Its food was immortal essence. After a long while, the whole bead of Green Grape Immortal Essence was completely absorbed. Gu masters refined Gu, used Gu, and also nurtured Gu. After Feng Yuan refined it, he did not feed Fixed Immortal Travel Gu. He had been unconscious for 7 days and 7 nights. The Fixed Immortal Travel Gu was starving. The lustrous butterfly wings had already dimmed. This was the first time Feng Yuan had fed it. Fixed Immortal Travel Gu ate its fill. It flapped its wings in satisfaction and flew into the air. The lustrous green light appeared again. Bits and pieces scattered along with every flap of its wings. it was a beautiful sight. The unique aura of an immortal goo. It was constantly emitting. The cost of feeding immortal goo is very high. Fixed immortal travel goo needs to consume 1 bead of immortal essence each time. But after this consumption, it does not need to be fed for 6 years. The higher the rank of the goo worm, the higher the cost of feeding it, but at the same time, the interval between feeding was also greatly lengthened. Rank 1 and 2 goo need to be fed many times a day. But at rank 4, they only needed to be fed once every few months. Rank 5 goo could be fed once every 1 or 2 years, and every time it was fed, the price was huge. It fed fixed immortal travel goo. Fong Yuan ignored it and let it fly around Dang Hun Palace as it pleased. As long as it didn't leave Dang Hun Mountain and wasn't killed by that shadow. Currently, Fong Yuan's aperture was only at rank 4 upper stage. It could not contain the complete immortal goo. The main reason for storing the spring and autumn cicada was that it was too weak. Other than that, it was also because of the life goo. After understanding the current situation, Fong Yuan confirmed that he was safe for the time being. Now that he had solved the problem of fixed immortal travel, his next step was to heal the injury on his soul. Let's go. Little fox immortal, bring me out to look for gut stones. The land spirit immediately responded, Master, you should have done this a long time ago. Please come with me. Little fox immortal brought Fong Yuan. They arrived at Dang Hun Mountain. The two walked on the uneven mountain rocks. Fong Yuan's body was swaying, causing the land spirit to be worried. Master, I will teleport you there. Teleport what? You need to save your immortal essence. Fong Yuan opened his eyes wide. Little fox immortal stuck out her tongue. She was startled by Fong Yuan, and couldn't help but think, this master is really imposing. Even if he is injured, he is still afraid. Master, there is a gut stone here. After walking for a while, the land spirit stopped and pointed at a stone, shouting. This stone looked like a human gut stone growing on the mountain rocks. Its color was mixed. If one did not look carefully, they would think it was an ordinary stone. Fong Yuan quickly walked over and squatted on the ground, using his hand to break this gut stone. Once the gut stone was broken, a goo flew out and turned into a gray eerie light, entering Fong Yuan's body. Fong Yuan immediately felt his mind become clear, a brand new strength replenished his soul, the buzzing in his ears also weakened by a lot. Dang Hun Mountain could shake the soul, it was a land of death for all living beings. Now that he was suppressed by the land spirit, Fong Yuan could walk freely. But Dang Hun Mountain was not a pure land of death. The souls of living beings would shatter on the mountain and scatter down, fusing with Dang Hun Mountain. Over time, gut stones would form. And some gut stones contained guts goo that could strengthen one's soul. This was like a place where poisonous snakes lived. There were often detoxifying herbs. All living beings competed, the great Tao was balanced, there was life and death. Dang Hun Mountain seemed like a land of death, but it contained a trace of life. But this guts goo could only exist for an instant. Within that instant, it would either die or be shattered by Dang Hun Mountain. Although the land spirit could suppress Dang Hun Mountain, the gut stones could not be moved and could only be taken away. Thus, Fong Yuan could only walk on Dang Hun Mountain himself. After replenishing this guts goo, Fong Yuan was like a traveler in the desert who was about to die of thirst, drinking a mouthful of cool water. He continued, and under the guidance of the land spirit, a competent guide, he found more than 10 gut stones and smashed them one by one. Fong Yuan thus obtained the nourishment of 8 guts goo. Not only was his soul fully healed, but it was even slightly stronger than before. With this Dang Hun Mountain, I will have a mountain of gut stones. As long as I continue to consume guts goo, one day, I will be able to strengthen my soul foundation to an unprecedented level. Halfway up the mountain, Fong Yuan's spirits were lifted as he laughed heartily. Immortal Fox was a lucky dog. Due to a stroke of luck, he managed to obtain Dang Hun Mountain and moved it to his blessed land. But she was also an extremely unlucky person. During the 5th earthly calamity, she died. If not for the blue charm lightning shadow, she would have become the strongest enslavement path expert of the current generation. It is a pity that Hu Immortal had Dang Hun Mountain, but did not have time to grow. Fortunately, this Dang Hun Mountain is in my hands now. After obtaining Courage Gu's help, Renzu arrived at the door of life and death and stepped into the path of death. The path of death was filled with darkness. Large numbers of Worry Gu were like yellow fireflies, surrounding Renzu like a tsunami. At this time, Courage Gu shone and helped Renzu chase away Worry Gu. Death required courage. Renzu successfully walked down, his body became whiter and more ethereal, gradually turning into a ghost. He could see again. When he reached the end of the path of death, in the deep and stable darkness, he saw Fairness Gu. He was extremely shocked at the huge body of Fairness Gu. You are Fairness Gu. Why is your body so huge? The mountain peak is like a speck of dust compared to you. The sea is like a grain of rice compared to you. Chapter 4:16. Renzu saw his eldest son and was overjoyed, running towards him. Verdant Great Sun had also turned into a white ghost, lying beside a lake, scooping up the river water to drink. The river water was like wine, its fragrance permeating the air. Verdant Great Sun drank very contentedly. My son, don't drink anymore, come back with me. Renzu walked forward and shouted. My respected father, why are you here? That's great, come drink with me. Verdant Great Sun opened his sleepy and hazy eyes. Renzu snatched the wine bowl from his hand, saying in exasperation, don't drink anymore, you only know how to drink. Who doesn't know that there is only a lake in the land of death, and the lake water inside is the soup? After the ghost drinks it, it will be muddle-headed and will no longer want to leave. Verdant Great Sun said, Father, you are wrong. This is not soup, it is requiem wine. After drinking it, it can stabilize the soul and get rid of the impurities in the soul, no longer agitated, and obtain great tranquility in the soul. This is the best wine in the world. I don't care what wine it is, you have to come back with me. Renzu pulled Verdant Great Sun's hand, but found that he was as heavy as a mountain and could not be moved. Verdant Great Sun shook his head. Some people die heavier than a mountain. Some people die lighter than a feather. Father, I had reputation Gu in my previous life, and bathed in the light of glory and fell to my death. Here, my body became heavier than a mountain, and I can't even move a step, I can only lie here. Ah! Renzu's heart sank, anxiously shouting, I told you, a tall tree attracts the wind, being famous is not a good thing. Quickly throw away the reputation Gu. Verdant Great Sun shook his head and sighed, fame and fortune cannot be brought with me in life, and cannot be taken away in death. After I died, reputation Gu left me. But fixed immortal travel Gu is still with me. Fixed immortal travel Gu could bring Verdant Great Sun's soul out of the door of life and death. It could even bring him to any place in the outside world. But only by walking on the path of life could Verdant Great Sun truly revive. What should I do? Renzu found that he had been tricked by Wisdom Gu. Although he came to the deepest part of the door of life and death, the endless darkness of obsession death domain, and also found Verdant Great Sunday. However, he realized that he couldn't take his eldest son with him. At this time, Fairness Gu spoke, O Renzu, do you still not understand? There were only two paths leading to the door of life and death, both created by Fate Gu. Life and death were up to fate. Everything had life and death. Only in this way could the universe circulate endlessly. Your eldest son, Verdant Great Sun, is dead. This is all fate's arrangement. Just accept it. Moreover, he was living very well here. The obsession death domain was the most peaceful place in the world. He's drinking the best wine in the world, without the worries of the outside world. Can't you understand this kind of happiness? The human ancestor stood still. He looked at his own flesh and blood for a long time before letting out a long sigh. He knew that he couldn't take away his eldest son's soul, at least not this time. He could only bid farewell to Fairness Gu and Verdant Great Sun, leaving obsession death domain. He stepped onto another path, a path that symbolized life, moving from darkness to light. But the human ancestor soon noticed. Walking on this path was many times more difficult than walking on the dead end. There were many more worry-goo on the path of life than the path of death. When Renzu walked on the path of death, the more he walked, the fewer worry-goo obstructed him. But when he walked on the path of life, not only were there many more worry-goo, every step he took, even more worry-goo flew over and tried to stop him. Soon, courage-goo could not hold on. "Oh Renzu, there are too many worries, they will only continue to increase. Only with peace in death can there be endless worry in life. Quickly go to Danghun Mountain and knock out the gut stones. If you want to survive, courage alone is not enough, you need guts as well." Renzu quickly went to Danghun Mountain. Enduring the pain of his soul shaking, he obtained guts-goo. With the help of guts-goo, his soul strengthened. Although it was still shaken, there was no need to worry. He went through Danghun Mountain and arrived at Luopa Valley. Luopa Valley was like a maze, twisting and turning. Sometimes, a vast bewilderment fog spread out, loosening the soul. Sometimes, Luopa wind that was as sharp as a blade would blow, cutting the soul. Renzu fell into the lowest point of his life, not knowing which direction to go. His soul that was strengthened by guts-goo gradually loosened in the bewilderment fog. The loosened soul was cut by the Luopa wind, falling to the ground in pieces. Renzu was almost completely lost, but at this time, Faith-goo flew out and illuminated his path. Renzu walked out of Luopa Valley, only the purest lump of soul was left. He let out a huge sigh of relief, feeling that victory was in sight. He came to Reverse Flow River. This was the last hurdle on the path of life. He went against the flow, it was even more difficult. Endless worries pushed against him, making it difficult for him to move forward. But he persevered, walking towards the light. "I am almost there." Seeing that he was about to succeed, Renzu looked ahead. There was only one last step left. He let out a breath of turbid air, relaxing, forgetting Wisdom-goo's reminder. He stopped moving. Once he stopped, Renzu was immediately washed away by the river. Life was not easy, it was like rowing a boat against the current. If one did not advance, they would fall behind. Renzu was washed to the bottom of Luopa Valley. He was so tired he could not move, he was trapped in Luopa Valley. Fong Yuan smashed the last gut stone, groaning in satisfaction. At this moment, he felt extremely comfortable. Not only had his heavy injuries completely healed, his soul was at least 5 times stronger than before. A powerful feeling overflowed from the deepest part of his heart. This wasn't a feeling of physical strength, but a feeling of mental strength. Be it thinking about problems or multitasking, Fong Yuan had a feeling of being able to handle them with ease. Unfortunately, there are only over 100 gut stones on Danghun Mountain. And not all of them contain guts-goo. Fong Yuan felt slightly regretful. When Danghun Mountain was obtained by Hu Immortal, it had changed hands several times. It was completely clean. Hu Immortal moved it into her blessed land, and managed it for decades. Almost every year, she would enslave large numbers of foxes and send them to their deaths on Danghun Mountain. Using their souls to irrigate the mountain, they produced gut stones. Once others obtained divine travel goo, then no matter how many top-quality wines Fong Yuan drank, he would not be able to obtain divine travel goo. Southern Borders Fei clan has top-quality wine, Zhuangxi Fei. Eastern Seas rank 7 Gu Immortal, Zui Xian Wang, creates a wine sea, storing countless wines, and holds a wine festival every year. Northern Plains Imperial Court has longevity wine. These large forces or Gu Immortals have 1 or 2 top-quality wines. Their chances of obtaining divine travel goo are much higher than mine. With this, Fong Yuan not only had to resist the earthly calamity and manage the blessed land, he also had to quickly gather 4 top-quality wines to refine the second aperture goo. But these are not the roots. Spring-autumn cicada is the most crucial point. Now that the time flow is 5 times faster, spring-autumn cicada's recovery speed is also extremely fast. I have been reborn twice, my luck is already extremely good, I cannot gamble on my luck a 3rd time. Before spring-autumn cicada recovers, I have to at least find success in one fell swoop goo, instant success goo, or natural success goo. Fong Yuan sneered and grinned, revealing his snow-white teeth. He laughed sinisterly. You rock men are really daring, you actually dare to bargain with me? Humph. The place you live. It's mine. The soil you eat is mine. The spirit spring beside your tribe is also mine. You live here, you are my slaves. I want to dig a canal, this is not a request. It's not an exchange, it's an order. When the stone men heard this, they all stood up with anger on their faces. Immortal, you don't know what's good for you, you dare to look down on us rock men. Back then, we rock men migrated here because we believed the words of the previous female immortal. But the environment here is getting worse and worse. It's getting worse and worse, who wants to stay here? You want us to dig a canal, it's the same as sending us to our deaths. Do you think we rock men are fools? We rock men are raised by nature, we're not willing to be your slaves. Let's go. Migrate, I've had enough of this broken place. The rock men tribe leaders roared and turned hostile on the spot. The attendants they brought along, the young rock men, all swarmed up. They rubbed their fists and glared fiercely at Fong Yuan. You want to leave? Ha ha ha. Fong Yuan raised his head and laughed loudly. It was as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. Then, he stopped laughing and glanced coldly at these rock men, saying with a cold tone, what do you think this place is? You come as you please and leave as you please. The previous rules don't count. From today onwards, I'm the supreme ruler here, my words are providence. You have to abide by it, even if you don't. Ah! Many young rock men clenched their fists and roared at the sky. Immortal, you're challenging the bottom line of my tribe. Immortal, although you're powerful, we're not afraid of you. We rock men never yield to power, we're natural warriors, we're brave and fearless. Only love can make us dig out our hearts and liver. Only gentleness can make us bend our backs. Roar! Fong Yuan pushed his palm and a golden dragon appeared. The golden dragon roared furiously, blasting the loudest stone golem into smithereens. Ah, he killed the granite tribe leader. The old tribe leader is dead, we have to avenge him. Even an immortal will be buried in the fury of my tribe. The death of the granite tribe leader was like a fuse, completely igniting the rockmen's fury. The rockmen attacked Fong Yuan one after another, each step creating a deep pit on the ground with a loud rumbling sound. Dozens of rockmen attacked together, but they had the might of a magnificent army. Countless rays of light rose from their bodies. There were also goo worms residing in the rockman's body. At this moment, they activated according to their wills. But in the next moment, these radiances suddenly disappeared. Little Hu Immortal took action and imprisoned all the goo worms. Fong Yuan sneered and started the massacre. The rock men were not afraid of death, but their strength was not as good as Fong Yuan. After a while, they were all smashed into pieces, dying a tragic death here. But these crushed stones were like magnets, condensing and forming new small rock men. Kill! Resist power, avenge father. We were born in heaven and earth, die in heaven and earth, we've never feared anything. The small rock men charged over and were slaughtered by Fong Yuan again. But these crushed stones condensed into even smaller rock men. These rock men were few in number, but after they formed, they immediately charged at Fong Yuan, shouting the slogan of avenging grandfather and father. This was the reproduction method of rockmen. Rockmen were only male. After the old rockman died, the scattered soul and stone would condense and form a new rockman, inheriting part of the old rockman's memories, as well as some important experiences. Or if the old rockman slept for a long time, the soul foundation would accumulate to a certain extent, and after cutting off part of it, it could also form small rockmen. After Fong Yuan killed the third wave of rockmen, the world finally calmed down. Only one rockman was left, lying on the ground, shivering. What's your name? Fong Yuan slowly walked in front of him. I am Yen Yong. The young rockman stuttered. do you know why I did not kill you? Fang Yuan stepped on Yen Yong's head. I don't know.
Chapter 4:18. 3 days later, the heavily injured Yen Yong returned to the tribe and woke up all the sleeping rock men. If it was any other male immortal, he would be a demon, wanting to enslave all of us. Not only that, he even wanted to plunder the handsome men of our rock men tribe for him to play with. We rock men are born from the heavens, we are free and unfettered, how can we bow down to his despotic power? We resisted on the spot, the immortal is too strong. But we rock men are not afraid of sacrifice, we had no fear, we finally injured him and forced him to escape. The other tribesmen were sacrificed, only I returned. I am about to die, but that immortal is still alive. When he escaped, he said that he would lead his fox army to exterminate our rockmen tribe. Yen Yong was powerless, he mournfully complained, bringing his tribesmen a shocking piece of grievous news. The rockmen were shocked and fearful, sorrowful and furious. There were those who declared war, those who wanted revenge, those who wanted to migrate, those who wanted to negotiate. They were like a group of dragons without a leader, be it the successor or the old tribe leader, they all died in Fang Yuan's hands. There were a total of 8 rockmen tribes, it was a mess. Some rockmen wanted to ask Yen Yong about the situation, but Yen Yong's injuries were very heavy, he had been unconscious ever since he returned to report to the police. Before they could come to a conclusion, just like what Yen Yong said, the Fox army started to attack the rockmen tribes. The rockmen resisted, but the Fox army was much larger than them, the situation gradually became dangerous, the 8 tribes had no choice but to work together and retreat underground to defend. But the Fox army still did not let them go, they kept attacking underground, even though they had to pay a heavy price for every attack, the Fox army was still endless. The rockmen cursed Fang Yuan in pain, their hatred and anger towards him could not be extinguished even by the heavenly river. The situation was getting worse day by day. Despair spread among the rockmen. But at this moment, Yen Yong woke up. Rockmen could recover through sleep, his injuries were healed, he immediately led his tribesmen and fought a few beautiful counterattacks. We rockmen are a brave tribe, we do not fear death. Even an immortal cannot humiliate us. Yen Yong gave a speech everywhere, raising the morale. Don't think that the immortal is so strong. Actually, he's strong on the outside but weak on the inside. He can only send the Fox group to their deaths. He's already injured. At the same time, he encouraged immortals to be injured, bringing hope to the rockmen. A stone man in despair. He clutched at this glimmer of hope like a drowning man clutching at a life-saving straw. Yen Yong changed the topic and talked about the old tribe leaders. He was injured by the combined efforts of the old patriarchs. The sacrifice of the old patriarchs is our greatest sorrow. Especially the old white stone chief. He died in my arms, and before he died, he entrusted the entire tribe to me. I watched as his soul left his body. He felt guilty. Why was he the one who died instead of me? At this point, he beat his chest and stamped his feet, seeming very sad and sorrowful. Immediately, a stoneman persuaded, Lord Yen Yong. Don't be sad. You are able to survive, give us a warning, and lead us to victory. This is already very impressive. Not bad. Our metal stone race admires you. Since the old patriarch has entrusted the clan to you, then I'll give it to you. In that case, please lead us Whitestone people. The stoneman liked to sleep soundly and was not interested in power and position. Especially now, at the moment of life and death, they were in a constant state of anxiety. The rockmen desperately hoped for a strong and brave tribesman to lead them.
Thus, Yen Yong first inherited the tribe leader position and took control of Whitestone tribe. A month later, he took control of the other tribes and became the leader of the 8 rockmen tribes. Another half a month later, he successfully led the rockmen to chase away the fox horde, and successfully protected their homeland. But this is not enough. As long as the immortals do not die, we will not have a future. The fox horde will regroup and attack our homeland again. We can only attack that immortal mountain and kill the immortals, only then will we be able to live a peaceful life. Yan Yong immediately suggested attacking Dang Hun Mountain. But a few rock men were hesitant. We have just suffered from the chaos of war, we want to sleep now. Our rock men numbers are greatly reduced, we don't have the strength to attack that demon's nest. We have a large number of offsprings, they were born in the war, we need to raise them well. Let them grow up. Yan Yong could only use Whitestone tribe leader. My tribesmen, do you think I will bring you to your deaths? Attacking the immortal mountain was not my idea. It was a secret that Whitestone tribe leader told me before he died. He said that this immortal mountain is the legendary Dang Hun Mountain. There are gut stones on Dang Hun Mountain, if we rock men obtain these gut stones, we will be able to increase our strength and strengthen our tribe. Whitestone tribe leader was the oldest and most experienced rockman among all the rockmen. Most of the rockmen thought of him as the sage of the tribe. His last words, along with Yan Yong's high prestige, finally incited all the rockmen to form an expedition army and attack Dang Hun Mountain. Fong Yuan specially arranged some fox horde around Dang Hun Mountain to form a weak defensive line. Yan Yong encouraged the surrounding rockmen, look, the Immortals' demon fox army is almost gone. We are already on our way to victory. The rockmen won along the way, singing their victory songs as they charged up Dang Hun Mountain with high morale. On Dang Hun Mountain, Fong Yuan brought a group of foxes and started a decisive battle with the rockmen. Fong Yuan displayed his terrifying strength, killing many rockmen, causing them to tremble in fear. But at this time, Yan Yong stood out and pointed out that Fong Yuan was injured, he was strong on the outside but weak on the inside, and started a decisive battle with Fong Yuan. The fox horde was exterminated, Fong Yuan was indeed no match, he was beaten away by Yan Yong again. Wait until I have accumulated enough immortal essence from the water and fire, I will return. At that time, it will be your doomsday. Before retreating, Fong Yuan shouted with a sinister expression. The rockmen were bulky and moved slowly, they were also not familiar with the terrain of Dang Hun Mountain, they could only let Fong Yuan escape. After beating away the immortals, the rockmen admired and worshipped Yan Yong, they cheered for their victory. My tribesmen, now is not the time to cheer. Yan Yong stood out, we cannot stay on Dang Hun Mountain for long, this is a demonic land. Whitestone tribe leader told me that only during these few days of the year, we rockmen can safely enter and leave this place. Let's move quickly and collect the gut stones on the ground. 3 days later, we need to leave this place. Their bodies were all hard rocks. To maintain such a strong body, the burden on their soul was huge. Once the rockmen moved too much, their soul would be damaged. Therefore, in their lives, they would spend 80% of their time sleeping, using it to nurture their souls. When their soul accumulates to a certain level, a portion of it would overflow. This portion of the soul would land on a rock and form a new life. The Rockman tribe was thus able to reproduce. When the rockmen obtained gut stones, the guts goo would strengthen their soul. Once their soul was strengthened, the overflowing portion would form small rockmen. 3 days later, inside the mountain, Dang Hun Palace. Yan Yong knelt on the ground and lowered his head, respectfully reporting to Immortal, after these 3 days of rest, our Rockman tribe has gained 6,000 small rockmen. Including us old tribesmen, the entire tribe's population has increased by 3 times. Fong Yuan sat on the high cloud bed, looking down at Yan Yong. Very good, this way, your rockmen will have enough manpower to excavate the canal. Do you still remember what to do next? I don't need to teach you, right? Yan Yong quickly replied, Supreme Immortal, I did not dare to forget your words, I have always engraved them in my heart. Very good. Fong Yuan lightly nodded, I will give you 3 months, I will order you to excavate a canal that traverses the northeast. Ah, 3 months? Yan Yong was dazed, "O mighty immortal, we rock men need to sleep to nurture our soul. If we overdo it, we will die of exhaustion. The canal is so long, if you only give us 3 months, our rockmen tribe will not be able to rest at all. If that's the case, when the canal is excavated, our rockmen tribe will probably all die." He, of course not all will die. I have already calculated, there will be around 200 people left. Fang Yuan smiled. Yan Yong could not help but tremble. His tribe had over 10,000 people now, but after the canal was excavated, there would only be 200 left. This was such a terrifying sacrifice. 3 months later, I want to see a canal. If not, before I kill you, I will tell the truth to your tribesmen. Scram! Fang Yuan's voice was as cold as ice. Yan Yong heard this demon-like threat and trembled in fear. He had a deep fear towards Fang Yuan. He did not dare to retort. His body curled into a ball and he really rolled away. "Master, back then, we spent a huge price to bring in these rock men." At the side, little who immortal land spirit persuaded, she could not bear to see large numbers of rock men die like this. "Don't worry, I still have use for the rock men tribe. Isn't it easy to increase the population?" Fang Yuan half reclined on the chair, squinting as he took out a burial soul toad from his aperture. Burial soul toad, rank 4 goo, used for storage. It was one of the goo left behind by Hu Immortal. It was only the size of a palm and was grayish-white in color. Its back was covered in black lumps, and its large eyes shone with a strange pale green color. It could only store souls, and when the soul was sucked into its stomach would expand. Fang Yuan used this to collect the souls of the rock men and fox groups that died in the battle. Right now, this burial soul toad's stomach was flattened. The souls that were inside were placed on Danghun Mountain by Fang Yuan, and new gutstones were created. Fang Yuan used a portion of the gutstones to strengthen his soul to 6 times that of a normal person. As for the remaining gutstones, he left them for the Rockmen tribe. Chapter 419. Yan Yong rolled out of Danghun Palace, passing through several dark and winding paths, before arriving at Danghun Mountain. Seeing this pink crystal mountain, Yan Yong let out a breath of turbid air. Being far away from Fang Yuan, the pressure and fear in his heart had dissipated by a lot. After trekking on the mountain for a while, he was finally discovered by his clansmen. "Ah, great, respected tribe leader, our hero, you are here." A few rock men immediately cheered. "Please let me kiss your toes, to express my admiration for you." A few rock men knelt on the ground. Great hero, great hero. Your courage is higher than the heavens, your guts are thicker than the earth." A few little rock men formed into groups, cheering. Yan Yong smiled, no one knew his bitterness. The cheers in his ears were so lively, and many of his clansmen were crowding around him, but he felt incomparably lonely. He looked at his clansmen beside him. These stone men who were brimming with smiles would probably all die in 3 months. They would die from exhaustion from digging the canal. But what could he do? In the eyes of the other rock men, Danghun Mountain's victory was so grand, so worthy of praise. Only he knew, this was just a game that the immortal manipulated behind the scenes. This cruel and cold truth made him deeply understand those rockmen's sacrifice, these difficult and glorious victories, how pale and shallow, how laughable and powerless. He led his clansmen to more and more victories. His fear of Fang Yuan also deepened. That immortal, he is a demon. His heart is even colder than us rockmen's, his strength is greater than the mountains. I am so weak, what can I do? Resistance means death. I admit my cowardice, I am really afraid of death. I have not slept enough, I am only 180 years old. Once Yan Yong thought of Fang Yuan's appearance. His heart was filled with fear. His unextinguished conscience was tormenting him. He knew, he was about to personally push almost all of his clansmen to death. He was being interrogated by his conscience. Every praise from his clansmen was like a whip, lashing his heart until it was riddled with scars. Honorable, beloved chief, you're finally back. Everyone is waiting for you. The rock men opened up a path, allowing Yen Yong to walk to the high ground unobstructed. My people. In the past 3 days, our tribe has grown many times stronger. Our expedition has yielded splendid results. However, this kind of victory was far from enough. You are willing to continue walking with me towards a better tomorrow. Yen Yong looked down from above, asking loudly. The rock men used their loudest voices to cheer, expressing their 120% support for Yen Yong. Yen Yong nodded. He had already expected this situation. It wasn't that there weren't any troublemakers or wise old stone men. But in the many fierce battles, they had all sacrificed themselves heroically. The only ones left were the stone men. Most of them were newborns and had purer minds. As for those old rock men, almost all of them were Yen Yong's hardcore supporters, some were even his fanatical worshippers. Yen Yong patiently waited for the cheers to end. Then he continued, in the past 3 days, I've been thinking in a place with no one around, how should we deal with the immortal that escaped? With immortal essence, the immortal can mobilize the demon fox army and have terrifying battle strength. He must have retreated to the water swamp in the north. Or to the fire pit in the east to catch his breath. We can't let him recover. Tribe leader is right. Tribe leader is too wise. We cannot let that damned immortal accumulate immortal essence. When that damned demon recovers his strength, he will definitely find trouble with us rock men. But what should we do? The water swamp and the fire pit are both extremely dangerous places, even us rock men can't stay there for long. Furthermore, these 2 places are so vast, who knows where the immortal will run to? The stone men were all talking at once, discussing spiritedly. Yen Yong interrupted everyone's discussion. He shouted, So, I thought of a solution. We need to use earth to fill up the water swamp and the fire pit. This way, that immortal will not be able to recover his immortal essence. My God! That's a crazy idea. Immediately, a stone man exclaimed. My great tribe leader, the water swamp is so vast, it makes people feel discouraged. And the fire pit has a fatal heat. How can we use earth to fill it up? That's impossible. An old stone man retorted. Yen Yong looked deeply at this old rockman, remembering it in his heart. This rockman dared to rebuke him. It proved that his admiration for him was not enough. In the future, I will give him the heaviest work and tire him to death. At this time, another old rockman spoke. We cannot be rash. I thought of a solution. Maybe we can dig a large canal to divert the water into the fire pit. The power of water and fire will cancel each other out. This will save us a lot of trouble. Yen Yong's killing intent became even more intense. This old rockman was very intelligent. He was more threatening than the previous rockman who rebuked him. He immediately decided to give this old rockman the task of guarding the fire pit. Let the demon fox army kill him, and get rid of this threat as soon as possible. Yen Yong calmly praised this old rockman, shouting, This is my idea. We need to dig a large canal as soon as possible, to divert the water and quell the fire, not letting immortals have a place to accumulate immortal essence. Actually, before White Rock tribe leader died, he also taught me. He said that the flood in the north, the fire in the east were all caused by that evil male immortal, that they were the source of his power. Just like how we rock men eat the earth. So White Rock tribe leader already predicted this. White Rock tribe leader is indeed the sage of us rock men. White Rock tribe leader is already 998 years old, of course he knows a lot. The rock men nodded, praising White Rock tribe leader, at the same time expressing regret for his death. Rock men slept most of the time. They did not interact much with each other. This sense of distance, mystery, made the dead White Rock tribe leader's intelligence even more unfathomable. According to the saying on Earth, if the old chief of the White Stone tribe were to hear this from the underworld, he would probably jump out of his coffin in anger. But unfortunately, he was completely killed by Fong Yuan. Even his soul was not spared. It was placed on Dang Han Mountain by Fong Yuan and shattered. His essence fell on the mountain, forming a gut stone. It was unknown which stone man had smashed this gall stone into pieces. Or maybe it was Fang Yuan's people. Chapter 420. Rumble, 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 the sound of explosions rang out incessantly, and smoke and dust filled the sky. This was the construction site where the rock men were digging the canal. Rock men eat mud as food. Many rock men had goo worms on their bodies that could be used. Lord Tribe Leader, you can't do this anymore. Yesterday, another 3 tribesmen died from exhaustion. They died so pitifully, they did not even have a descendant. An old rockman knelt in front of Yan Yong, crying loudly. Once a rockman died from exhaustion, their soul would dissipate, there would not be any leftover souls to form small rockmen. Yan Yong beat his chest, shouting, "How can I not know? How can I not know? Our tribe's heroes died again. For our tribe's bright future, for a better tomorrow, they sacrificed their lives. Precisely so, we cannot slack off. Ever since we started work, we have already suffered many attacks from the fox groups. These fox groups are getting bigger and bigger, evidently that male immortal who deserved to be cut into pieces is recovering his immortal essence. We need to continue working hard, dig the canal, and make him lose his foundation of strength." The old rockman was stunned, but, "Tribe leader, you are a good rockman, I understand that you are thinking for our tribe. These heroes will not die for nothing, look over there, I have already set up heroic tombstones for them. In the future, our children and grandchildren will all pay respects to them and be grateful." Yan Yong pointed far away. There were many tombstones erected there were already many of them. The old rockman looked at the tombstones, sighing. The scene of a large number of rockmen dying from exhaustion. When they first appeared, Yan Yong, the new tribe leader, had already ordered people to build these tombstones. Their low morale was immediately boosted. Every day, there were rockmen dying from exhaustion. But they were still working hard. They are all dead, what is the use of these tombstones? The old rockman was one of the few clear-headed people, he was deeply worried about this. "Tribe leader," he persuaded again, "we rockmen also pay attention to reproduction. These rockmen who died from exhaustion, their souls have completely dissipated, they do not even have descendants." Yan Yong's expression did not change, he did not speak. Among the small rock men beside him, someone shouted angrily, "You old bastard, are you afraid of death?" The old golem straightened his neck and said, "Kid, what are you talking about? I am getting old. But I've always been a stone man. How could a stone man be afraid of death? Since you're not afraid of death, why are you wasting your breath? That's right. We are contributing to the tribe. For the sake of the collective, what's the big deal about sacrificing some personal interests?" Beside Yan Yong, there was a group of little stone golems. At this moment, they all opened their mouths and shouted, "Old senior, if you're tired, you should take a rest first. Don't worry, my time is tight, I still need to rush to other places to monitor the progress." Yan Yong patted the old rockman's shoulder and walked past him, continuing his journey. A group of little rock men followed behind Yan Yong, chattering away. They expressed their disdain for the old stoneman. Being scolded by this group of juniors made old stone man extremely depressed. He was seething with anger. He wanted to refute loudly, but he saw that there were large stone slabs erected everywhere around the construction site. All kinds of slogans were engraved on the stone slab. "I'll do it even if I die. As long as the people are united, we can build a grand canal within 3 days. The more daring the rock men are, the more productive they will be. Create a beautiful future for the rock men. Long live tribe leader Yan Yong. For the rockman's bright future, sacrifice your life, sacrifice your youth." A fanatical atmosphere enveloped the rockmen's hearts. Even the stone man who died from exhaustion had a smile on his face before he died. Old stone man wanted to speak, but after opening his mouth a few times, nothing came out. He knelt on the ground in a daze. After a long while, he suddenly raised his fist and punched the ground. A muffled sound was heard. Old stone man stood up, without saying a word, he bent his back and walked towards the construction site. Yan Yong rushed to the next section of the construction site. The river had already started to take shape. Large numbers of adult rock men were digging in the river. At the side, the little stone men, who were slightly weaker, formed small patrol squads. Some were supervising the construction site, some were carving slogans, some were erecting tombstones of heroes. These little rock men were called the Rock Guards, formed by Yan Yong himself. Report to tribe leader. 5 to 6 little rock men immediately rushed in front of Yan Yong, loudly reporting the results of these days of labor. Reporting to the great tribe leader, we have dug another 50 li in this section of the construction site. Reporting to the great tribe leader, we have regretfully sacrificed 120 of our tribe members. They are all heroes of our tribe. Reporting to the great tribe leader, we actually found 3 lazy and sleeping clansmen in the construction site. This is the shame of our Rockmen tribe. We must denounce them. Very good, very good. You are all good. Remember, you must erect tombstones for the heroes who died. At the same time, tie up those shameful people, denounce them in front of everyone, let them know their shame and become braver. Yan Yong said. Yes. You are all the future of our tribe. Seeing you is like seeing the bright future of our tribe. You must continue to work hard. Yan Yong praised. The little rock men were so excited, their bodies trembled. Everything is for the Rockmen tribe. Respected tribe leader Yan Yong, you are our glorious flag. We will unite by your side, and walk towards the bright future together. They all shouted, their eyes filled with passion. Yan Yong subconsciously avoided their gazes. The passion of these little rock men made him feel terrified. He gazed far away. Far away, every section of the river was being dug intensely. Yan Yong could see many of the rock men, their broad backs facing the yellow soil and the sky. The river that was tens of meters wide, section after section, extended out of sight. This was such a grand project. Every time Yan Yong saw such a scene, his heart would surge, as long as they were united. The Rockmen tribe's power was so strong, it could change the heavens and earth. But when Yan Yong thought of Fong Yuan, the most terrifying demon in history, his surging heart was like a cold wind blowing past, suddenly turning into a snow-white glacier. No matter if it was the little fox groups outside, or the slogans on the stone slabs, or the organized rock guards, they were all part of that demon's scheme. With so many methods, they managed to weaken the Rockmen tribe's retaliation to the lowest level. Yan Yong personally executed all of this. Seeing the river forming day by day, his fear of Fong Yuan grew. That male immortal not only had terrifying martial strength. What made people feel despair was that his craftiness and viciousness were also unfathomable. Yan Yong felt himself sinking into the abyss. He was as low as an ant. And behind him, it was Fong Yuan's mountain-like figure. He was looking down at him. He was like a walking corpse, or a puppet. The strings that controlled his limbs were in Fong Yuan's hands. Every day, he saw his tribesmen die. His heart felt like it was being stabbed by a knife. Seeing his clansmen working so hard to dig the canal, he felt even more desolate and sorrowful. If it is possible, I would rather not know the truth, and live in a lie. Wouldn't that make me look happy? Yan Yong retracted his gaze, waving his hand and bringing the little rock men to the next section of the river. This is the last estrus goo, go. Primeval essence had already been poured in. Fong Yuan flicked his finger and shot the green bean-like goo into the sky. Estrus goo exploded, turning into pink light powder that sprinkled down on the fox group below. The entire fox group breathed in the light powder, and immediately became restless. Soon, countless male foxes crawled on the female fox's back, moving around and injecting life essence into the female fox's body. Foxes had different gestation periods. For example, golden foxes could give birth to little foxes after 2 months of gestation. Each litter would have 3 to 4 foxes. And for desolate beasts like three-tailed foxes, even 100 years of gestation was not enough. Normally speaking, the stronger the beast, the longer the gestation period. But in the current Hu immortal blessed land, the fox groups were more ordinary, and their gestation period was shorter. Ever since the rock men started digging the river, Fong Yuan had been using estrus goo every day to give birth to the little foxes, and strengthen the fox group. Who Immortal did not have an immortal goo. During the fifth heavenly calamity, she was killed by the blue charm lightning shadow, thus she did not have a set of enslavement path goo worms. But in her Dang Hun palace, there were still many goo left. For example, support goo like Burial's soul toad, expenditure goo like estrus goo, as well as some spare enslavement path goo worms, most of them were fox enslavement goo. To quickly increase his strength, Fong Yuan had already used up most of these goo. Under his efforts, the number of foxes had increased by several times. Although foxes were omnivores, the blessed land could not support such a large number of foxes. In less than 2 years, many foxes would starve to death because they could not find food. But Fong Yuan could not care about that anymore. His only thought now was to survive the sixth earthly calamity. A few months passed in the blink of an eye. The canal was dug, traversing the northeast. A vast expanse of white water flowed along the wide river, surging and creating countless waves. Whoosh! The water flowed into the burning fire pit. The power of water and fire collided, evaporating the river and forming a large amount of water mist that rose into the sky. When the river water calmed down, the black flames were mostly extinguished, only the edges were left, and there were still 3 areas left. This way, the water and fire were balanced, the water in the north subsided, and the ground was exposed. Large amounts of water flowed along the canal, pouring into dozens of huge craters in the east, forming many lakes. Even though there was still a large amount of mud in the north. The east had already turned into scorched earth, not even a blade of grass could be seen. But the balance of water and fire was like a scar on a bleeding wound. As long as time passed, the east and north would gradually regain their vitality. Under Fong Yuan's secret instructions, Yen Yong brought over 100 rock men back to their home in the south. Master, what do we do with these clouds? Little Hu Immortal looked at the thick sea of clouds in the sky, feeling troubled. Even though it had rained several times, there was still water vapor floating in the sky, condensing into clouds. These clouds blocked the sunlight, shrouding a large area of the east in darkness. It was very annoying. One had to know that there was no strong sunlight or strong winds in the blessed land. These clouds would severely affect the ecology of most of the east. No need to care about it. Fong Yuan took a look at the sea of clouds, before retracting his gaze. He had already expected the appearance of the sea of clouds, it was just a minor detail. The most important thing now was the sixth earthly calamity. Chapter 421. Several months later. In Hu Immortal Blessed Land, the fox groups had gathered into an army formation, tightly surrounding Dang Hun Mountain. Fong Yuan stood at the peak of the mountain with his hands behind his back, looking at the sky with a solemn expression. Time passed. Today was the day of the sixth earthly calamity's descent. Even though Fong Yuan was a Gu immortal in the 500 years of his previous life, he could not remain calm facing the earthly calamity. Each earthly calamity would get stronger and stronger. It was a severe test of life and death for the blessed land and Gu immortals. By the time Fong Yuan took control of the blessed land, there was only 1 year and 3 months left. This time was too short. He could only prepare as much as he could. Digging the canal to balance the water and fire was one, nurturing the fox groups to reproduce was the second, keeping fixed immortal travel Gu and preparing to retreat at any time was the third. As for the sea of clouds in the sky and the blue charm lightning's shadow in the west, he was powerless even if he wanted to. The wind gradually stopped. Far away in the sky, the sea of clouds rumbled, a lump of light was brewing. It's here. Fong Yuan's pupils shrunk as he muttered softly. Amidst the sea of clouds, the ball of light suddenly exploded, forming a magnificent white round door that faced the vast blessed land. The door of light shined with a dazzling light. A huge monster with a yellowish-brown body appeared. It looked like a huge rock. It slowly descended from the door of light. Looking at this, a desolate beast calamity? Fong Yuan squinted, staring at it without blinking. The boulders continued to descend without a sound. Fong Yuan could not help but lick his dry lips, his heart sinking. There were countless types of earthly calamities, among which there were desolate beasts. In the blessed land, one or many desolate beasts would appear and attack the center of the blessed land together, wreaking havoc in the blessed land and wreaking havoc. If they were not exterminated in time, no matter how vast the blessed land was, it would be destroyed by them. Damn it! It is actually a desolate beast. I hope this desolate beast has no immortal goo. Fong Yuan could not help but curse in his heart. If a desolate beast had an immortal goo, its battle strength would surpass ordinary goo immortals. This mysterious desolate beast landed on the ground with an agility that did not match its size. From afar, it looked like a boulder that was slightly flat. However, when Fong Yuan looked at it closely, he discovered that the boulder was actually a yellowish-brown carapace that emitted a metallic luster. The carapace was covered with thick mud. Just as Fong Yuan was guessing. What exactly was it? A pair of huge pincers that looked like two steel pincers extended from the square carapace. Then, 18 slender pincers appeared. They came out from both sides and landed on the ground. Then, they easily lifted its heavy body up and away from the ground. Mud crab! Upon seeing this scene, Fong Yuan blurted out. He recognized the desolate beast's true appearance. It was a huge crab with a body as big as a mountain. When it propped itself up, its height could reach a quarter of Danghun Mountain. Its first pair of pincers were even more terrifying than steel pincers. With a light pinch, it could break a mountain rock. Dragon scissors. Its other 18 chelicerae, although thinner and more slender than the first pair of chelicerae. But in reality, they were even thicker than 100-year-old trees. On its body, there were a large number of parasites. Most were water and earth path goo worms. Sometimes, there was even an entire group of goo worms. Fortunately, Hu Immortal Blessed Land has abundant immortal essence. I have abundant immortal essence. Fong Yuan gritted his teeth, rejoicing internally. When the mud crab first appeared, the land spirit had already used the heavenly power of heaven and earth to imprison all of its goo worms. Be it rank 1 or rank 5 goo, they could not display their power. The crucial question was whether this desolate beast had an immortal goo or not. If this mud crab had an immortal goo, it would depend on what immortal goo it was. Immortal goo were unique and extraordinary, the blessed land could not imprison them. Immortal goo were the key factors that affected the entire situation. After the mud crab completely stretched its limbs, it slowly moved its body towards Danghun Mountain. Fong Yuan's thoughts moved rapidly. Large numbers of fox groups covered the entire mountain, surging towards the desolate beast like a tide. Soon, they surrounded the mud crab. Their claws and teeth bit on the mud crab's claws, while the sturdy golden foxes charged over. But the mud crab was huge, it was simply a giant. As it moved forward, ordinary fox groups could not stop it, instead they were trampled into meat paste. Fong Yuan's expression was cold, he still commanded the foxes to send themselves to death. He had reproduced so many to be sacrificed. Injuries would accumulate, it would be good if he could stop the soul beast for even a little bit. But the mud crab continued to move forward with a crushing momentum, not moving an inch. It was like a moving mountain, ignoring the fox groups below it. The colorful waves of attacks hit the swamp crab's body like countless brilliant fireworks. This was the power of the 100 Beast King, 1000 Beast King, and myriad Beast King of the fox group. They had many goo worms on them. Under the power of the goo groups, the mud on the mud crab's body was completely knocked off. The gigantic yellow river finally stopped for a moment. It suddenly opened its mouth and spat out large amounts of mud. At the same time, countless small gates opened on its stomach, yellow mud gushed out like a yellow mud waterfall. The mud fell on the grassland, instantly forming a large swamp. In the yellow mud, strange-looking crabs stood up. Some were huge, like fierce tigers. Some had sharp claws, like steel needles. Some had 8 claws and were extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, a million-strong crab army was formed. It is indeed a mud crab. It can give birth to countless small crabs at any time, forming an army. Fang Yuan's expression turned grim. The fox group and the crab army fought, entangling intensely. The fox army shrank greatly, suffering heavy losses. The crab army's casualties were many times that of the fox group, but the desolate beasts continued to produce an endless number of crabs. Fang Yuan quickly mobilized the fox groups hiding outside the mountain. Fortunately, I used up all the estrus goo and produced a large number of fox groups, otherwise the army would not be enough. In this short period of time, Fang Yuan felt dizzy. The number of fox groups he commanded was too huge. Even though his soul was 6 times that of a normal person, he could not endure it. With the crab army opening the way, the mud crab continued to move forward, regaining its previous speed. The claws on both sides of its body. They landed alternately, like a song, with an elegant rhythm. But beneath its feet was a tragic battlefield, blood flowed like a river, corpses were piled up, every inch of land was stained with blood. The mud crab did not differentiate between friend and foe, every time its claws stepped, a mass of blood would burst out. When the claws were raised. In the deep pit on the ground, there was fox meat paste, as well as the broken shells and limbs of the crab. This desolate beast was so huge and majestic. In all fairness, its speed was not fast. But precisely because of this, it gave people a huge psychological pressure. Seeing it coming over, Fang Yuan felt like a guillotine of death was hanging on his neck. Damn it! Fang Yuan gritted his teeth. The desolate beast in front of him was the king of the swamp. It was covered in carapace, hiding in the depths of the swamp all year round, even its eyes had degenerated, there was no weakness at all. Fang Yuan mobilized the fox group. He tried to block it, but it was useless. He could only watch helplessly as the swamp crab approached him. Can you teleport it away? Fang Yuan turned his head and asked Little Who Immortal Land Spirit. Gu immortals were different. Blessed lands were different, and the power of the land spirit was also different. Some land spirits could teleport, for example, the tyrannical tortoise in Three Kings' blessed land. Some land spirits could not even do so. Some land spirits could summon wind and rain, while some could control the flow of time at will. Let me try. Little Who Immortal's breathing was rapid. She also felt a huge psychological pressure. She mobilized her immortal essence. Using all her strength, her cute little face turned red. Ayayaya! She let out a tender, childish cry. With a light swoosh, the giant swamp crab disappeared from where it stood, moving 9,000 paces away. Success! Little Who Immortal's face was flushed, she gasped for breath. Fang Yuan also let out a sigh of relief. Master, I used a bead of green grape immortal essence just now. Little Who Immortal reported with a pained expression. No matter. Fang Yuan's expression was cold, he continued to mobilize the countless foxes and continued to attack the mud crab. After a few minutes, the mud crab got close again. The land spirit had to use the same trick again and teleported away. Another bead of green grape immortal essence was lost. Little Who Immortal was pained, while Fang Yuan's heart was also bleeding. In Who Immortal blessed land, there were only 78 beads of green grape immortal essence. Fang Yuan used one to feed fixed immortal travel goo. Now, he used another 2 to teleport the mud crab. He still had to use this immortal essence to refine goo and manage the entire blessed land in the future. There were many places where immortal essence was needed, but Who Immortal was already dead. These green grape immortal essence were like water without a source, no matter how much was used, it could not be replenished. Some crabs charged up the mountain from a direction that was overlooked. Fang Yuan snorted coldly, he immediately ordered the land spirit to release a portion of Dang Hun Mountain's power. Immediately, the area where the crab army was moving became a dead zone. Countless crabs died instantly, their bodies lying on the ground unharmed, but their souls were shattered. The situation was very strange. Unfortunately, Dang Hun Mountain's power has a lasting effect on the soul. The desolate beast's soul is strong, it can last for a while. I cannot let it reach Dang Hun Mountain and destroy this precious forbidden land. Fong Yuan did not participate in the battle personally. Chapter 422. It hugged its head and howled in pain. The blue lightning was also disorderly and only stabilized after a long time. Evidently, the shadow had suffered soul damage when it entered Dang Hun Mountain. In Dang Hun Palace, the smoke shadow reflected this scene. Fong Yuan watched with a livid expression. If not for the land spirit's timely teleportation, he would have died. Little Hu Immortal patted her chest, her face pale with lingering fear. When it rains, it pours. The blue charm shadow had also joined the battle, making the situation even worse. The blue charm shadow's failure in sneak attack made it angry, and it charged at Dang Hun Mountain. Every time it slammed into the walls, Dang Hun Palace shook. It hit the surface of the mountain, causing soil to fly and creating huge black pits. Fong Yuan's heart bled as he watched. This was Dang Hun Mountain. In the entire world, there was only one such place. Fortunately, the blue charm shadow stopped attacking after dozens of times. Its soul was severely injured, and its lightning was very disorderly. It did not dare to attack again. In this period of time, the land spirit teleported the swamp crab twice. In total, it had used up 5 green grape immortal essence beads. And the fox army, which had originally been large in numbers, had already been wiped out. What made Little Hu Immortal discouraged was that this desolate beast only had small scratches on its body, and its steps were as steady as before. It was like a diamond bone that could not be chewed through. Whether it was the blue charm shadow or the swamp crab, they all had the same goal: to destroy the central area, exhaust the immortal essence, and kill the land spirit. Their ultimate goal was to destroy the entire blessed land. They were on the same side, and did not fight amongst themselves. Instead, they cooperated. When Fong Yuan and the land spirit were having a headache over this swamp crab, the blue charm shadow gave up on Dang Hun Mountain and targeted this land. It did not dare to attack Dang Hun Mountain. It started to attack the sky and earth. The earth was destroyed, and deep pits appeared. The sky shattered, showing the damage of the mirror. Fong Yuan felt a deep sense of helplessness. Not good, master. A hole has appeared in the blessed land. Little Hu Immortal's tone was anxious. The blue charm shadow's attack shattered the sky and earth, creating a hole in the blessed land. Cut off all the blessed lands around the loophole. Fong Yuan's body was as cold as ice, his tone indifferent. Ah! Little Fox Immortal's eyes widened as she exclaimed. Do this. It was the same as completely abandoning him, and he could never recover. If a hole appeared in a blessed land, it could be filled with immortal essence. If it wasn't mended in time, the hole would expand and form a channel. Once the tunnel was formed, those Gu immortals outside the blessed land would definitely swarm in with ill intentions. At that time, the situation would be even more out of control. Tian Ti Mountain had demonic path Gu immortals. Righteous path Gu immortals did not dare to attack because they had huge businesses. However, there was no lack of deranged people in the demonic Dao who worked alone. Love adventure. In any case, Fong Yuan had done this many times in his previous life. Under Fong Yuan's orders, Little Hu Immortal gave up hundreds of acres of blessed land. The blue charm shadow continued to destroy and create loopholes. The land spirit continued to discard it. The swamp crabs kept attacking Dang Hun Mountain. The land spirit had no choice but to teleport continuously. The consumption of green grape immortal essence had already reached 13 beads. Sob sob sob, the blessed land has become smaller. I have also lost a lot of immortal essence. Little Hu Immortal's tears flowed down as she sobbed. Stop crying. Fong Yuan shouted coldly. His expression was ashen. There is no point in delaying like this. Their only hope was to kill these two troublemakers. But I do not have any offensive immortal goo. Even if I use rank 5 goo on the swamp crabs, there will be no effect in a short period of time. I can only take a gamble now. Fong Yuan gritted his teeth and made up his mind. Desolate beasts were extremely powerful. Just by relying on their majestic physique and fierce recovery ability, they could ignore many rank 5 goo. Especially this swamp crab, its defense was extremely strong and was considered high level among desolate beasts. Fong Yuan had many rank 5 goo, touch gold goo, loose bones goo, crow 7 goo and so on. When used on the swamp crab, it was like throwing pebbles into a lake, it could only cause slight ripples. He needed to attack continuously to gradually gain some effect. But Fong Yuan could not activate these goo worms to attack. Once he reached the mountain, he would be attacked by the blue charm lightning shadow. Even if he gave the goo worms to the land spirit, Fong Yuan did not dare to take the risk. The land spirit would also perish. Once it was destroyed by the blue charm lightning shadow, Fong Yuan would not even have the ability to use fixed immortal travel goo to retreat. Only immortal goo could change the situation. Although Fong Yuan had 2 immortal goo, they had no offensive ability. Don't teleport anymore, let this damned swamp crab attack Dang Hun Mountain. Fong Yuan shouted, ordering Little Hu Immortal Land Spirit, release all of Dang Hun Mountain's power. Buzz! Dang Hun Mountain had always been restricted by Little Hu Immortal. Now that it was completely released, the whole mountain immediately became hazy. An enormous and formless soul-shaking power directly spread out of the mountain, extending for 3,000 steps, sweeping through the surroundings. Only Dang Hun Palace did not change under the land spirit's control. The gigantic swamp crab quickly got close to Dang Hun Mountain. Under the power of Dang Hun Mountain, its hard shell could not provide any protection. Its soul suffered an intense attack, causing its movements to freeze. But soon, it went berserk, its speed more than doubled as it attacked Dang Hun Mountain. Bam! Its huge claws were like steel pincers, smashing heavily on Dang Hun Mountain. The hard mountain rocks were as fragile as flour at this moment, and holes were easily smashed into them. The huge hole was at least a few hectares in size, dust rose and the whole of Dang Hun Palace shook. Little Hu Immortal Land Spirit's face turned pale, Dang Hun Palace continued to shake, dust fell and cracks spread on the walls and pillars like snakes. Suddenly, Little Hu Immortal let out a miserable cry, not good. That blue charm lightning shadow has already gone to the north, it is wantonly destroying the heaven and earth, creating many holes. The scene in front of Fong Yuan changed, showing the scene of the blue charm lightning shadow attacking the heaven and earth, creating holes. The blessed lands east and north were constantly being corroded by the remnants of the earthly calamity, they were weaker than the other regions. The blue charm lightning shadow was targeting the blessed land's weakness and attacking it. Luckily, we balanced the fire and water. Otherwise, the blue charm magic shadow would have destroyed everything. It would be 10 times worse than it was now. Master, what should we do? Little Fox Immortal was at a loss. The situation was so bad that it could not get any worse. The swamp crab was like a steel hammer that pierced straight into the heart. It consumed immortal energy intensely and was wantonly destroying Dang Hun Mountain at the same time. As for the blue charm film, it was extremely sinister. He would specifically look for the weak points of the blessed lands and make them bleed. Every loophole it created was a bloody wound on the blessed land. Fong Yuan's eyes flashed with ferocity. The more dangerous the situation was, the more it stimulated his fighting spirit. Land spirit, move the swamp crab. Move 3,000 steps away each time. Yes. In this way, the distance was shortened, and the consumption of immortal essence was correspondingly reduced. Within 3,000 steps of Dang Hun Mountain, the soul-shaking power could still cause damage to the swamp crabs. Land spirit, abandon the entire northern region. Fong Yuan ordered. Ah! Little Fox Immortal was stunned. She did not dare to believe her ears. Hu Immortal Blessed Land's northern region had an area of 1,000,000 hectares. With one sentence from Fong Yuan, he was going to abandon it. Once it was abandoned, who immortal blessed land would forever lack this piece of land? Fong Yuan was definitely going all out this time. Who immortal blessed land was only 6 million hectares, he was actually going to abandon 1/6 of it. Master, this. Little Fox Immortal hesitated. Quickly do as I say. Fong Yuan stared at the image in front of him and shouted. Little Fox Immortal pouted her red lips as her eyes filled with tears. Tears rolled down her face as she bawled. Land Spirit was the representative of heaven and earth. Abandoning the blessed land was like cutting off one's own flesh. Abandoning the entire northern region was like a person chopping off his own leg with his own hands. Master! Don't! Little Fox Immortal cried loudly. She begged. But Fong Yuan's expression was as cold as ice. He did not make any compromises. Master's orders could not be disobeyed. Little Fox Immortal could only bear with the pain and abandon the entire northern region. That blue charm shadow was in the center of the northern region, destroying heaven and earth and creating a hole. When it sensed that something was wrong, it hurriedly moved and attempted to rush out of the northern region. But when it was 10 kilometers away, it did not manage to escape in time and was trapped in the northern region. It let out a shrill, ear-piercing scream. Its voice was filled with indignation. But it made a mistake. The blue charm shadow could only disappear along with the northern region and land in the central continent. Success! Seeing this, Fong Yuan was so excited that he almost shouted. If it was any other time, the blue charm shadow's soul would not be injured and it would definitely be able to react in time. If not for the fact that it was attacking the heaven and earth crazily, causing it to lose its energy and speed, it would definitely be able to escape quickly. At the crucial moment, Fong Yuan endured the pain and sacrificed himself to protect himself. He finally got rid of the blue charm shadow. As for what kind of trouble it would cause outside the central continent, that was not within Fong Yuan's consideration. Boom boom boom, the entire Dang Hun mountain was still shaking. The wild beast swamp crab's soul was so strong that it forced itself to attack Dang Hun mountain. Its blood, fur, bones, internal organs and so on were all good materials for goo refinement. You damned crab, I am going to strip you naked. Little Who Immortal wrinkled her nose and grinned, revealing her canine teeth as she walked towards the swamp crab, muttering to herself while gritting her teeth. This time, Fong Yuan had a very comfortable sleep. 3 days later, he woke up and laid on the bed, not wanting to move at all. This time, he was truly relaxed. The 6th earthly calamity had just passed, Fong Yuan had gained a lot of time, he could finally let out a sigh of relief. Ever since his first rebirth, he had been roaming around, struggling and resisting. Especially on Sancha Mountain, he had racked his brains and used all his methods. Now, he had finally protected the blessed land. To Fong Yuan, it was a stable back. If Who Immortal blessed land was destroyed, he would be in trouble. He had exposed many things. Let's not talk about other things, let's talk about fixed immortal travel goo. Fong Yuan was not a goo immortal yet, this immortal goo could not be kept in his aperture, its aura would leak out and be easily detected by goo immortals, who would try to snatch it. Now, fixed immortal travel goo was placed in Who Immortal blessed land, and with immortal essence, it could be nurtured. Besides this, there was also the refinement of second aperture goo. Without Little Who Immortal's immortal essence, Fong Yuan could not refine this immortal goo. He would have to wait until he became a goo immortal. By then, divine travel goo would probably belong to someone else. It would be too late. Protecting Who Immortal blessed land was a huge help to Fong Yuan. Fong Yuan lay down for a while, before getting up to eat and drink. After filling his stomach, he went back to sleep again. This time, he slept for 10 hours before waking up. His fatigue was swept away, he felt refreshed and his mind was clear, his condition was very good. Land Spirit, where is it? He stomped his feet and called out. With a whoosh, Little Who Immortal tore through the air and teleported, appearing in front of him. Master, I dismantled that crab, we can definitely sell it for a good price. Little Hu Immortal's face was red. She had personally dismantled the culprit. It made her feel both relieved and excited. That's right, Master, there are 3 letters here. During the earthly calamity, someone stuffed them in through the loophole. Little Hu Immortal said as she took out 3 goo and handed them to Fang Yuan. When the loophole was big enough to become a passage, people could enter and leave. Before that, some goo worms could be stuffed in through the loophole. These 3 goo. They were all information path goo worms. One looked like a paper crane, it was rank 3 lightning symbol paper crane goo. One was a green bird, vivid and lifelike. One was a green bird, it was rank 5, it was letter sending goo. One looked like a small sword, it was rank 3 flying sword letter goo. After returning home, he calculated his losses and immediately stomped his feet in anger. After finding out the culprit, he sent the flying sword letter goo to challenge Fang Yuan. Humph, he clearly knows I am still immortal, but he challenged me as a goo immortal. He even said it so righteously, claiming to be fair, this guy is still as shameless as he was in my previous life. But, why did he treat me as someone from Crane Gate? Fang Yuan was doubtful as he opened the lightning symbol paper crane goo. He opened it and took a look, his pupils shrunk as he showed an expression of astonishment. What? Fang Zheng is still alive? As he read on, the doubts in his heart were finally cleared away. So that's it. Feng Yang from Crane Gate is an astute person, he actually thought of this method to get rid of his competitors. But, he greatly underestimated me. How can I join Crane Gate? But the transaction in the letter is what I need. Thinking of this, Fang Yuan calmed down. This is Fang Yuan, he gave up the blessed land on his own accord, completely abandoning it. It seems he is worried that the loophole will form a passage and allow outside goo masters to enter. Feng Yang was slightly shocked, but soon sneered, I'll let you cut it, let's see how far you can cut it. Every piece of blessed land you give up is the same as cutting your own flesh. However, after a while, Feng Yang's expression changed completely. He is still cutting the blessed land? It is probably several thousand mu. He has some courage, no wonder he could take the risk to snatch the inheritance. After a while, Feng Yang's expression turned ugly. Chapter 425. On Tianti Mountain, the holes were densely packed and were appearing frequently. Not only the elite disciples of Crane Gate were watching closely, there were also many goo immortals hiding behind the scenes, paying close attention. Using this time, Fang Zheng tried 3 more times, finally successfully sending the lightning paper crane goo into the blessed land. A green bird spread its wings and flew over, following the hole and entering Hu Immortal blessed land. This is letter sending green bird goo. What is Feng Jioga trying to do? Feng Yang saw this and his expression turned grim. But at the next moment, his pupils shrunk to pin size, his mouth opened wide and his face was filled with extreme shock. Oh my God! He actually cut off such a big piece of blessed land? Feng Yang was tongue-tied, he was like a stone statue. Fang Yuan gave away a whole 500,000 square kilometers of blessed land, the entire mountainside of Tianti Mountain was filled with the shadows of the blessed land, a large grassland covered everyone's vision. A goo immortal reacted the fastest, his sword light flashed and he revealed his true body. Ha ha ha, such a huge blessed land. It is mine, no one can snatch it from me. Jian Yisheng shouted excitedly, he wanted to pull this territory into his own blessed land and expand his territory. But right at this time, a lightning light shot out. Fuck me. Jian Yisheng was caught off guard, he cursed and was sent flying by the blue charm lightning shadow like a cannonball. Jian Yisheng was not easy to deal with, he immediately fought with the blue charm lightning shadow. The commotion was intense, the mountains shook, the elite disciples of Crane Gate were all dumbfounded. What made them even more shocked was, more than 10 figures appeared on the battlefield like a pack of hungry wolves. They split up this 500,000 square kilometers of who immortal blessed land at lightning speed. You damned bitches. I lured the monster away, I worked hard and did a great job, but you didn't leave anything for me. I am your ancestor. I curse you to have your assholes blocked when you shit, and to have sons that grow on your heads. One sword was so angry that he shouted. He had never suffered such a huge loss in his life. He was in a sorry state after being chased by the blue charm shadows. There's also that little thief Fong Yuan. He's truly vicious and audacious, actually scheming against me. Fight me if you have the guts. He shot out the flying sword letter Gu. The flying sword letter Gu's speed was extremely fast. Furthermore, it had the ability to pierce through space. Even if there were no loopholes, it could still shoot into the blessed land. Everyone at the crane gate was dumbfounded. Is this the demeanor of a Gu immortal? This Jian Yisheng is truly an embarrassment to us Gu immortals. He Fengyang could not help but cover his face with his hands. At this moment, it glowed with a platinum light. There was a vermilion gate tower within the light. It was 30 meters tall and had a 9-colored plaque on it. The pink auspicious clouds gathered, and the rainbow light shone on Fengyang's body. In the blink of an eye, Fengyang disappeared from where he stood. Moving the blue charm shadow or the desolate beast swamp crab out of the blessed land was beyond little Hu Immortal's abilities. But to move a Fengyang, it was still possible. Therein, He Fengyang's heart skipped a beat upon seeing this. A bolt of lightning descended from the sky. It was the blue charm shadow. But the platinum radiance brought along the vermilion door. It suddenly retracted. The blue charm lightning shadow's attempt to charge into Hu Immortal blessed land failed. Fengyang felt his vision blur for a moment before he focused his eyes again. The scenery around them had changed drastically. He was on the grassland, and the grass was all around his feet. The sea of clouds above their heads cast a thick shadow. Not far away, there were a few lakes with clear and crystalline waves. We've reached Hu Immortal blessed land. Fengyang reacted quickly. The goo worms on his body were all sealed, just like when he first entered the blessed land. A cloud of smoke rose in front of him and expanded to the size of a floor mirror. Fong Yuan's figure appeared in the mirror. He was sitting, leaning against the back of a chair. His legs were crossed, his left hand was placed on his raised knee, while his right elbow was placed on the large armrest, and his palm was supporting his face. His black hair hung down freely, and his eyes were half squinted. His leisurely and languid movements and demeanor gave off a dangerous, demonic, and dark feeling. My adorable little brother, to think I could see you in Central Continent. Fong Yuan spoke. His voice was so foreign to Fengyang, yet so familiar. Fengyang's body shook, his eyes were filled with intense hatred as he growled, "Gu Fong Yuan, you are a deranged demon, an executioner who slaughtered my kin. I will kill you with my own hands." Saying so, he charged towards Fong Yuan. But this Fong Yuan was just an image formed by a cloud of smoke. Fengyang dispersed the smoke. Soon, the dispersed smoke gathered again, forming a perfect image of Fong Yuan. Fengyang pointed at Fong Yuan and shouted, "Fong Yuan, you don't even have the courage to meet me? You coward! Shameless traitor, inhumane bastard! The worst that could happen was death. Yet, in order to drag out an ignoble existence, you killed your entire family. How could you do such a treacherous thing? Are you still human?" He. Fong Yuan laughed heartily and leaned against the back of the chair in satisfaction. "My dear little brother, I didn't expect you to be so stupid. Whether I did it or not, they will die. If that's the case, why can't I live? Without my counterattack, do you think you will be brought back to Central Continent? On the contrary, I am the one who saved you. I'm your savior after all." Bullshit. Preposterous and shameless. Fengyang heard Fong Yuan call himself his savior, and his nose became crooked. The smile on Fong Yuan's lips gradually disappeared, and he sighed, "Fengyang, my little brother, you really disappoint me. You haven't improved at all these years. No matter how high your cultivation is, you are just someone's pawn. Alright, let's get down to business. I have read the letter from Crane Gate. Don't talk nonsense about promising me the position of an elder from now on. Instead, we can make a deal. Fang Zheng's chest heaved up and down, and his breathing was heavy. He stared at Fang Yuan's image with hatred in his eyes. This pair of brothers looked so similar, almost identical, and they had the most intimate blood connection. Unfortunately, they were mortal enemies. Fang Zheng breathed roughly a few times, and finally restrained his surging killing intent towards Fang Yuan. Thinking of the sect's orders, he said, "Our sect is not interested in the fox groups or gu worms in Hu Immortal Blessed Land. But the guts gu on Dang Hun Mountain have some value. Our sect will send more disciples here, bring them to Dang Hun Mountain." Stop. Before Fang Zheng finished speaking, Fang Yuan interrupted, "I still don't believe your Crane Gate's sincerity. This is what I want, prepare it for me first, and give it to me as soon as possible. I don't have Yuan stone, but I have the corpse of the desolate beast swamp crab that can be used for the transaction as Yuan stone. The details are in the letter. Go back and take a good look." The moment he said that, a tiny lightning bolt flew over, landing in Fang Zheng's hand. It was that electric paper crane gu. This electric paper crane gu had already been refined by Fang Yuan for his own use. The contents were the gu worms that Fang Yuan wanted, all kinds of materials, as well as the swamp crab's blood, meat, bones, carapace and so on. Fang Zheng raised his head, and was about to speak when the scene in front of him changed. He was transported out again. "Check it, is there anything wrong?" After Fang Zheng left, Fang Yuan did not relax, and instructed the land spirit. Blessed lands could not imprison immortal gu. Fang Yuan did not meet Fang Zheng personally, because he was worried that there was an immortal gu hidden on him. Crane Gate was a huge clan, they would not lack immortal gu. Although Fang Zheng's aperture could not hold an immortal gu, and could easily leak the immortal gu's aura. But the gu master world was full of strange things. There were many methods to hide the immortal gu's aura. Fang Yuan had to be on guard against this. The land spirit checked it several times, and after confirming there was no problem, Fang Yuan relaxed. "I passed the earthly calamity. Is this considered a blessing in disguise?" Fang Yuan squinted, considering his situation. The situation in front of him. It was much more advantageous than what he had expected. In order to swallow Hu Immortal Blessed Land, Crane Gate actually covered for their enemy, Fang Yuan. Such boldness, as expected of one of the 10 great sects of Central Continent. Everything was based on benefits, enemies, friends, everything was built on this foundation. In other words, this was the so-called big picture view. Under the restrictions of the system, under the requirement of the big picture view, even if Fang Zheng hated him, so what? Wasn't he still obediently negotiating with him? Once they realize that they cannot control me, they will lose everything if they attack forcefully, so Crane Gate will come to negotiate and trade. Even if they find out, they won't say anything about the righteous and demonic factions colluding. Because Crane Gate has already admitted that I am their disciple. This is a meticulous plan. But this is what I need. Even if this disciple's identity is fake, it is enough to intimidate other forces. Looking at Jian Yisheng and Feng Jiuge's letters, I will know how precious this identity is. Fang Yuan thought. He did not mind this identity. In essence, he was still a demonic path cultivator, he was still a human, he could still do things freely, nobody could restrict him. But at the same time, he could trade for other resources he needed. Come, I still want to go to Langya Blessed Land and snatch connecting heaven gu. Now that I have Crane Gate to trade, I do not need to do so. But Crane Gate will not let me go after I snatch Hu Immortal Blessed Land. Negotiating now is because they are afraid of me, there is no choice. I cannot be careless and give them a chance. Fang Yuan warned himself, as for his brother Fang Zheng, he was secondary. Killing him would at most raise his aptitude by using blood skull gu. But the disadvantage was that he would become enemies with Crane Gate and put himself in a dangerous situation. Chapter 426. He Fengyang carefully looked at the densely packed letter that was flickering with lightning. Feng Yuan only wanted 3 things: yuan stone, goo worms and materials. 5 million yuan stone? Sure. Not to mention 5 million, even 10 million or 50 million would be fine. He Fengyang sneered. At the level of goo immortals, immortal essence was the most important. They could have as many yuan stone as they wanted, they did not care. Oh? And 5 spring egg goo? He Fengyang was slightly stunned. Spring egg goo was a rank 5 goo. It looked like a white goose egg and was obtained by killing specific eggmen. If the spring egg goo was planted deep underground, it would form a primeval water spring. This meant that a spirit spring could be grown. Every spring egg goo represented a small-scale spirit spring. Every small-scale spirit spring, from the moment it forms to the moment it disappears, could produce at least 100 million yuan stone. But spring egg goo's value was much higher than 100 million yuan stone. Goo immortals often bought them and planted them in their blessed land to form a spirit spring that could nourish all living beings. With a sufficient spirit spring, the primeval energy in the blessed land would be denser, and it would be beneficial for nurturing and strengthening goo worms. On the contrary, without a spirit spring, the primeval energy in the blessed land would be diluted by immortal essence and produced. In a sense, spirit springs could save immortal essence. To think that this Feng Yuan, a mere mortal, also knows the importance of spring egg goo. But this goo is in short supply even for goo immortals. How could we give you 5 at once? 3 is more or less enough. Your Hu immortal blessed land will belong to our crane gate sooner or later. He Fengyang shifted his gaze and looked at the contents below. Below, Feng Yuan listed many goo worms. What does he want so many low-rank goo worms for? He Fengyang was puzzled. If Feng Yuan wanted those rank 5 high-quality goo worms, or rare and powerful ones, then so be it. But what he wanted to trade were some rank 2 and rank 3 goo worms. Although there were rank 4 ones, their numbers were few. I understand. This kid's wariness was really strong. He is afraid that if he directly asks for a rank 5 goo, we will tamper with the goo worms, so he plans to refine the goo himself. The process of goo refinement had to be precise and meticulous. If a goo worm was tampered with, it would destroy the entire refinement process. Conversely, successfully refined goo worms are all safe and clean. He Fengyang suddenly felt a little troubled. It turned out that he did have such a plan. Now that he saw this, he understood that this plot had failed before it could even be carried out. This kid is not easy to deal with, but how does he know so many goo refinement recipes? Looks like his background is definitely not simple. He Fengyang was secretly shocked. But on second thought, he smiled again. This Feng Yuan. You don't know what's good for you. Was goo so easy to refine? Every goo refinement was a huge investment. The higher the rank of the goo, the higher the failure rate and the greater the loss. How old are you? Goo refinement is not something that can be done with just talent. The most important thing is the accumulation of experience. He Fengyang did not know Feng Yuan's background, nor did he know that fixed immortal travel goo was refined by Feng Yuan. If he knew, he would not be able to laugh. He Fengyang continued to read. Oh? Among them, he also asked for relic goo. 1 yellow gold relic goo. 3 purple crystal relic goo. He Fengyang's gaze paused, knowing what Feng Yuan was planning. Feng Yuan had rank 4 upper stage cultivation. This was already known to the goo immortals of the 10 sects. It was not a secret. Feng Yuan used a yellow gold relic goo. That was rank 4 peak stage. After advancing to rank 5 initial stage, he could use 3 purple crystal relic goo to jump to rank 5 peak stage. Crane Gate was one of the 10 great sects of Central Continent. It had a huge business. They naturally had these relic goo. Every year, there would be disciples and elders who would unexpectedly obtain relic goo and offer them to the sect in exchange for contribution points. And the sect would also give the bronze to purple crystal relic goo. As the sect's mission rewards, they would be given out. He Fengyang could take out these relic goo, but letting Feng Yuan advance to rank 5 so quickly was not in line with Crane Gate's benefits. This time, I will first trade a purple crystal relic goo to make this Feng Yuan covet it. These relic goo are what he wants the most, I need to stop him and make him trade the guts goo. He Fengyang continued to read. Other than goo worms, there were some materials. Most of these materials were very common. There were some rare goo refinement materials, but they were not in large quantities. It seems this kid has made up his mind to refine goo. Refine. But why does he want star heron bile, toadstone, ascension wine and so on, these extremely uncommon materials? There were very few recipes that could be used for these materials, some of them were as valuable as the parts of desolate beasts. Even he Fengyang had to spend a lot of effort to get these things. No matter if this kid is deliberately mystifying me, or trying to divert my attention, or refining some rare goo worm, I cannot give him all these materials at once. By making him anxious, he would be able to find out his true intentions. I will give him a jar of ascension wine this time. This ascension wine was a top-quality wine, brewed by Crane Gate's third Supreme Elder. It was he Fengyang who had joined the third Supreme Elder over 100 years ago. During the banquet, the third Supreme Elder was in a good mood, and rewarded him with 3 jars of ascension wine. The third Supreme Elder liked to drink wine, it was one of the pleasures of life. But he Fengyang did not like it, ascension wine was the most worthless to him. At the end of the letter, he Fengyang saw the parts of the desolate beast swamp crab. He licked his lips. This was a desolate beast, an existence comparable to goo immortals. So many desolate beast corpses, it seems this earthly calamity is a desolate beast calamity. This kid Feng Yuan's luck is really good, he used Dang Hun Mountain to kill the swamp crab's soul, and obtained such a complete swamp crab corpse. He Fengyang only needed a moment to guess the earthly calamity's situation. This swamp crab can be eaten completely, but did Feng Yuan ask for any rockmen in this letter? Is it because he does not know about rockmen and has limited knowledge? Or is it because the group that migrated there are still alive? There is too little information. Feng Yuan ordered the land spirit. In the next moment, the two teleported to Dang Hun Mountain. Heavens, so many gut stones. This place is a mess, there was indeed a huge battle. Maybe that male immortal is already dead. Our Rockman tribe will usher in a glorious tomorrow. Our descendants will be endless, tribe leader Yan Yong, we can build the largest Rockman tribe in the world. The stonemen cheered and shouted, venting the excitement and happiness they felt at this moment. Dang Hun Mountain was filled with gut stones. Within 5 steps, there would definitely be one. The rockmen enthusiastically crushed the gut stones, strengthening their souls. Many small rockmen were already born, and they were also beating the gut stones. The new souls quickly grew stronger, allowing them to control more stones as their bodies. There were originally only a few hundred rockmen left, but in just a day, their population expanded by 10 times. The larger the population, the faster the growth. On the second morning, their population broke 10,000. On the third evening, they had 300,000 tribesmen. All the gut stones on Dang Hun Mountain were also harvested. On the fourth day, Dang Hun Mountain started to show its might, the rockmen could only reluctantly leave, majestically returning to their homes. Chapter 427. Gurgle gurgle gurgle, in the huge stone cauldron that was as tall as 5 people, the green-blue liquid was bubbling continuously. All in the water looked like it was boiling, but it was actually overflowing with cold air. Even if a rockman were to put his hand in, he would instantly turn into a popsicle. Feng Yuan stood in front of the cauldron, splitting his attention to control it while taking out the primeval elder goo. He multitasked, activating the primeval elder goo as pieces of yuan stone flew out. Plop, 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 yuan stone fell into the cauldron, splashing water. Primeval elder goo was a rank 3 storage goo, it could store 1,000,000 yuan stone at most. It was like a crystal ball, translucent, the clouds and the ball condensed into Old Man Cloud. There were a lot of yuan stone stored inside. Old Man Cloud was smiling. When yuan stone was little, it was a crying expression. When large numbers of yuan stone were thrown in, Old Man Cloud's smile gradually disappeared, turning into a bitter melon expression. Fong Yuan had used over 500,000 yuan stone in this goo refinement. If it was before, he would not have been able to afford it. But now, he was rich and imposing. After selling the desolate beast swamp crab and buying a lot, he still had over 6 million yuan stone left. Yuan stone was thrown in, forming a whirlpool in the cauldron, causing the liquid to spin rapidly. The cauldron was shaking slightly. The goo refinement was at a crucial moment. Fong Yuan was completely focused, he could not be distracted anymore. His forehead was soon covered in sweat, he could only call out softly, "Land Spirit." "Yes." Little Hu Immortal answered crisply, quickly throwing silver ingots into the cauldron. The silver ingots fell into the water, causing the whirlpool to slow down. The silver ingots finally calmed the water in the cauldron, turning into solid silver ice cubes. Finally, the liquid in the cauldron completely froze, large amounts of silver fog spread out. It froze the cauldron, even spreading 5 steps away, dyeing the ground silver. Fong Yuan breathed heavily. The goo refinement has been going on for 3 days, it is finally over. Rise! The silver ice cubes cracked, goo worms flew out. These goo were all rank 3, shaped like small cups or trumpet flowers. His palm was wide enough to hold 3 of these goo. Their entire bodies shone with a brilliant silver light. Used to store liquids, they were used to store goo worms. Little Hu Immortal counted carefully and beamed. She clapped her hands and said excitedly, 137, 146. 159. Master, you are amazing, refining 159 rank 3 goo at once. We can sell it for a lot of money. What are these goo worms? Hee, these are all silver light cup goo. I still need to use them to refine goo, so I won't sell them. Fong Yuan smiled. This silver light goo was refined by a goo immortal 380 years after Fong Yuan's previous life. The fusion continued. After reaching rank 5, it would be the goo Fong Yuan needed. Of course, it was impossible to sell it now. These days, I have used large numbers of guts goo to strengthen my soul to 52 times that of a normal person. That was why he wasn't too tired. Fong Yuan was very satisfied with the result of this goo refinement. The benefits of strengthening the soul foundation were starting to show. If Fengyang saw this, he would not dare to underestimate Fong Yuan. Fong Yuan's goo refinement attainment. It was already much higher than him. But his head was still slightly dizzy. Every time he refined goo, his soul would be burdened. Not to mention Fong Yuan's large-scale goo refinement. If it was before, Fong Yuan could only rest and sleep to recover his soul. But now, he had a better method. Land Spirit, this cauldron is already useless, get rid of it. I will take a walk outside. Yes, Master. Little Hu Immortal immediately started working. 3 to 4 days had passed, large numbers of gut stones condensed on Dang Hun Mountain again. Fong Yuan casually stepped on a few pieces, and the flying guts goo immediately recovered his soul and even strengthened it a little. Fong Yuan immediately felt that his head was no longer dizzy, and his thoughts were as fast as lightning. He laughed heartily. This guts goo is indeed a legendary goo, its effect is amazing. I might as well strengthen my soul to the limit today. 68 times. Fong Yuan felt refreshed, and his movements were light and quick. 77 times. Fong Yuan's thoughts were like lightning, every thought flashing like sparks. 85 times. The strength of Fong Yuan's soul had already surpassed the limit of his body. 92 times. Fong Yuan could clearly feel his soul. In his senses, his soul was grayish-white, and its appearance was no different from Fong Yuan's, except that it was extremely strong, with bulging muscles and a body like a bear or a tiger. And although Fong Yuan's body was strong, he only had the back of a wolf and the waist of a bee. His soul was stored in this body, and there was a feeling of pressure. Had he reached the limit? 93 times. Fong Yuan stored another guts goo, and his soul was strengthened again. This time, Fong Yuan felt an unprecedented carefree and comfortable feeling. This kind of pleasure was 100 times better than taking drugs, tasting delicacies, or even having intercourse. Even a tough man like Fong Yuan could not help but let out a moan of pleasure. The indescribable comfort and intoxication made one forget to return and enjoy the endless taste. A cold light flashed in Fong Yuan's eyes, but his heart was on high alert. He crushed the gut stone again, and his soul became stronger again. This time, the feeling of comfort was several times stronger than before. 97 times, 98 times, 99 times. The feeling of comfort that came from the depths of his soul was so strong that Fong Yuan's whole body was trembling, his muscles and bones were numb, and the feeling was indescribable. 100 times. The intense intoxication was like a hurricane, and Fong Yuan almost fainted. This is the limit, I can't use guts goo anymore. Fong Yuan bit the tip of his tongue, and used the pain to keep himself awake, and not lose himself in it. Ordinary people could only raise their soul by 100 times, and it was commonly known as 100-man's soul. This was also the limit of life and death. If the soul was strengthened even a little, the whole soul would explode with a loud bang. It would be like eating too much and causing the stomach to burst. But the explosion of the soul was countless times more serious than a bloated stomach. The soul would completely dissipate, instantly destroyed, and after being preserved for a period of time, it would slowly rot into white bones. Chapter 428. Not selling gut stones, but rock men? Fengyang looked at the letter in his hand with a dark expression. In Hu Immortal Blessed Land, Dang Hun Mountain's guts goo was what Crane Gate needed the most. Once they had the guts goo to increase their soul foundation, the strength of all Crane Gate disciples would increase by 30%. Moreover, gut stones could not leave Dang Hun Mountain, they could only be mined on the spot. This way, using this excuse, Crane Gate's disciples could enter Hu Immortal Blessed Land. As time passed, Fong Yuan's vigilance would gradually decrease, and it would be much easier for Crane Gate to secretly tamper with him. But Fong Yuan refused to sell gut stones no matter what. Fengyang was gloomy, since when did I, a grand Gu immortal, have to be troubled by a mortal thief? He gritted his teeth as he thought, his handsome young face was now somewhat distorted. He had battle strength, but he could not use it. Fong Yuan was holed up in Hu Immortal Blessed Land like a tortoise, and with fixed immortal travel goo, he could leave at any time. Fengyang, and even the entire Crane Gate, were afraid of harming him, and did not dare to touch him for the time being. It seems that the rock men that Hu Immortal moved in back then are still alive. But this thief Fong Yuan sold so many rock men at once, how many guts goo did he use to nurture them? Thinking of this, Fengyang felt his heart bleeding. Several months had passed since the last transaction. The time in Hu Immortal Blessed Land had been extended by 5 times. That was only about a year. Fong Yuan nurtured so many young and strong rock men, if he gave these guts goo to Crane Gate to nurture disciples, how good would that be? But this scoundrel Fong Yuan would rather nurture the rock men than let Immortal Crane's sect use them. His heart could be destroyed, he could be destroyed. What made Fengyang angry was not just this. More importantly, he was still angry at himself. Fong Yuan sold so many rock men, even if he was a Gu immortal, he could not help but be moved. In the Blessed Land, if there were enough rock men, Gu immortals could excavate underground and extract large amounts of underground resources. All kinds of metals, gems, ores, as well as Gu worms, underground creatures, and so on, came in an endless stream. Other than that, if there were more stone men, they would be able to build an underground city. This would indirectly expand the space of the Blessed Land. There was no strength in the Blessed Land, the resources that Gu immortals excavated mostly came from the surface. This is just a flat surface. However, with the addition of the stone men, they could even use the underground. The benefits would definitely multiply. And on the market, the supply of stone slaves could not meet the demand. The stone man spent most of his life sleeping. An ordinary stone man would die at 1,000 years old. In his life, he could only produce 4 descendants. If he used soul path goo worms to strengthen the rockman's soul, it was not impossible. Many goo immortals had tried but had never succeeded. There was only one reason. That was the cost. The value of a soul path goo worm was much higher than a single rockman. Unless there were some goo immortals who had special needs for the rockmen, the losses would outweigh the gains. In this world, only Fong Yuan, who controlled Dang Hun Mountain, could do this. He could raise so many rockmen without restraint. And in this transaction, the price that Fong Yuan gave in the letter, it also moved He Fong Yang quite a bit. Even if Crane Gate did not use it himself, he could sell it for a profit. But even if there was a bargain in this transaction, He Fong Yang was still unhappy. He knew that this was the bait that Fong Yuan threw out. Its use was to set up a space path passage between 2 places. A goo master could enter from the child goo, and exit from the mother goo. Similarly, from the mother goo, they could instantly reach the child goo. Whole Earth goo was often used to connect 2 blessed lands. Normally, Whole Earth goo was used to transport all kinds of resources. During battle, reinforcements could use Whole Earth goo to quickly reinforce the blessed land. To carry out the transaction and transport these rock men, it is unavoidable to use Whole Earth goo. But I am worried that your Whole Earth goo will be tampered with. It is better for me to refine it myself to protect myself. Fong Yuan thought of this, and a trace of spring-autumn cicada's aura leaked out, as he casually refined the flying sword letter goo in his hand, and quickly sent a reply. Half a day later, He Fong Yang received the reply letter, and opened it to see a large number of goo worms listed, as well as all kinds of materials. Oh? You don't want to use the Whole Earth goo I gave you, but instead modified the recipe of the Whole Earth goo, and want to refine a new goo worm yourself? He Fong Yang showed anger. Bullshit. Whole Earth goo has been widely used for over 500 years, the recipe has long been known to goo immortals, how can you modify it? This little thief Fong Yuan is too vigilant, he wants to use this to extort a sum of money from me, so that I will not dare to reject his transaction. I don't need to look to know that among these goo refinement materials, there must be a relic goo, or a spring egg goo, or a rare strength path goo worm. Nothing. He Fong Yang took a few glances, but did not find any relic goo, spring egg goo, or strength path goo worms. Instead, there were large numbers of unorthodox materials, and low-rank goo worms. The highest rank 5 goo worm was the Earth Path goo worm Mountain 9 Ren goo, used to increase the success rate of the goo refinement. Other than that, there were also many rank 4 goo, like the common move position goo, and the extremely useful side push guide goo. He Feng Yang's thoughts wavered. Looking at this, it seems like he really wants to refine goo. As long as his luck is normal, these materials can already refine 3 Whole Earth goo. Don't tell me, he really modified the recipe of the Whole Earth goo? No, Fong Yuan is only a mortal, how can it be? But what if it is the goo immortal behind him? If it was a modified recipe, then the new goo would definitely be stronger than the Whole Earth goo. He Fong Yang could not help but feel a rush of excitement. Even if he could not get the recipe, after Fong Yuan refines it, he would definitely hand over the child goo to him. At that time, as a grand goo immortal, he would be able to reverse deduce many things from the child goo, and even restore the recipe. 2 days later, Fong Yuan received a letter. Fong Yuan opened it, and as expected, He Fong Yang found all sorts of excuses in the letter, purposely cutting off many materials and goo worms. The motive was obvious, he was trying to probe Fong Yuan's true recipe. Fong Yuan could not help but shake his head and laugh. He Fong Yang was too meticulous, this was his strength, but also his weakness. Although the number of times they interacted was pitifully small, Fong Yuan had already seen through most of He Fong Yang's character. He immediately replied righteously, requesting He Fong Yang not to cut anything, otherwise he would not be able to refine the goo worms. But Feng feigned civility, continuing to make excuses until Fang Yuan almost believed him. After a few letters, Fang Yuan helplessly chose to compromise, and listed another list. "Lad, you are still too inexperienced to compete with me." Feng received the letter, and handed over a portion of the items listed on the list. Then, he continued to find excuses to delay. In the end, he wasted a whole day. When Fang Yuan showed extreme helplessness and anger, Feng finally stopped, feeling that the time was right. He held on to the sixth list that he had cut off and went back to study it. But his refinement path attainment was not good. After painstakingly researching and refining many times, he could not see any results. Half a month later in Central Continent time, he received the whole earth goo from Fang Yuan. He acted like he had obtained a treasure, and continued to study it patiently. This time, he studied for 3 whole days, and finally succeeded in reverse deducing the recipe. Seeing this recipe, Feng shouted furiously, "Fang Yuan, you little bastard! This is clearly an ordinary whole earth goo recipe." This time, our 3 tribes will each send out 20,000 warriors to form an alliance army and march towards the west, directly attacking the Immortals' nest. This is a great war, everything is for the benefit of the people. Our fathers and ancestors sacrificed their lives and scattered their souls to defeat the Immortal, only then can we live in peace now. We need to follow in our ancestors' footsteps and fight bravely. The land spirit mobilized the fox groups and appeared around the Rockman tribe. The Rockman higher-ups took the chance and quickly formed an alliance army. The alliance army moved majestically towards the western part of the Blessed Land. Along the way, there were 5 to 6 small-scale battles. The Rockman army won all of them while the fox groups retreated in defeat. "Look there! That is the demon's nest." Yan Yong stood up and arrived in front of the whole earth goo. "Earth, you are our mother, you raised our Rockman tribe. Why are you protecting that damned immortal?" Yan Yong shouted in pain. At this time, the earth crack opened its mouth and little Hu Immortal used a goo worm to change her voice. The Rockman army heard a gentle female voice, "Oh Rockmen, my children. It is not that I want to protect that immortal, but that immortal entered my stomach and is residing in my heart, threatening me to protect him. I will open my mouth now and ask you to destroy him. I will give you my blessings." The Rockmen were shocked before cheering loudly. "Mother Earth has spoken. We are warriors blessed by Mother Earth. How despicable is that immortal, he actually threatened our benevolent and gentle Mother Earth. We will definitely tear him into 1,000 pieces." The morale of the Rockman Alliance army rose greatly. The earth crack opened its mouth and Yan Yong took the lead, shouting, "Rockmen, charge." Saying so, he jumped into the hole. "Charge, we cannot let our tribe's hero fight alone. Charge, we have no fear, we are omnipotent, we want to slaughter the immortal. Mother Earth is on our side, we will definitely win this battle." The Rockmen jumped into the earth crack like dumplings. In the deep and dark tunnel, they fell down. After a while, they landed on solid ground. "Where is this? Why is it so dark? This place is darker than underground, we cannot see anything. How can we fight if we can't see?" The Rockmen were confused, when they suddenly heard loud coughing sounds. A lump of light suddenly split above their heads. Rapid air currents formed and enveloped them, shooting them out. 230, 240. The Crane Gate disciples stood beside the whole earth goo's child goo, carefully counting the Rockmen that were shot out. The Rockmen fell to the ground after being shot out of the earth crack. They were immediately restrained by the Crane Gate disciple, unable to resist or move. Yan Yong and some Rockmen elders stood at the side, lowering their heads as they looked at this scene, keeping quiet out of fear. Feng, who was furious after being tricked by Fang Yuan, considered the big picture and did not destroy the whole earth goo's child goo in a fit of anger. He planted it on Feihe Mountain. As for the Rockmen, Fang Yuan only used their tribe's belief in Mother Earth. Then used the Fox Group and the cooperation of the Rockmen higher-ups to successfully lure 60,000 young Rockmen to Feiyi Mountain and sell them. Man is the spirit of all living beings. In this world, other than the orthodox Renzu bloodline, there were also variant humans. Although variant humans were smarter than other life forms, they could not compare to humans. Hairy men were ignorant, egg men were innocent, rock men were crude, even a 7 or 8-year-old smart child could be tricked. Be it southern border or central continent. Such things often happened. Some child would meet a hairy man or rockman and be tricked into the market. After the variant humans were sold, they would still be ignorant. They would count the child's money. After this transaction, Fang Yuan only received 1,600,000 yuan stone. Although the 60,000 rockmen were young and strong, they were not as valuable as a swamp crab. Fang Yuan still had to pay for the goo refinement materials, and using whole earth goo cost 65,000 yuan stone. At the same time, he bought some ordinary materials. To take revenge on Fang Yuan, he Fengyang raised the price by 10%. The things that Fang Yuan wanted were also reduced by a lot. Fang Yuan did not mind, he had already gotten what he wanted. After the transaction was completed, Yan Yong and the other rock men returned to Hu Immortal Blessed Land using whole earth goo. Fang Yuan had already arranged the explanation for them. He believed the rockmen tribes would not retaliate. Even if they retaliated, he would kill them and raise another batch. There were still many gut stones on Dang Hun Mountain anyway. Fang Yuan calmed down and continued to cultivate. But when he reached rank 4 peak stage, Nine Eyes Liquor Worm lost its effect. Liquor Worm could refine the quality of primeval essence, but it could only raise it by a small realm. When Fang Yuan reached rank 4 peak stage, he already had peak stage true gold primeval essence. He had already reached the peak. If he went any higher, it would be rank 5 initial stage light purple primeval essence. Fang Yuan sealed Nine Eyes Liquor Worm. This was the goo worm that had accompanied him all the way from Qingmao Mountain. From rank 1 Liquor Worm, it fused all the way to rank 4, and now it was finally retiring. Relying on true gold primeval essence to refine his aperture, Fang Yuan's cultivation speed slowed down. Of course, because he was in Hu Immortal Blessed Land, compared to ordinary goo masters in the outside world, Fang Yuan's cultivation speed was at least 5 times faster. If I continue cultivating like this, by the 7th earthly calamity, I will have at least rank 5 middle stage cultivation, close to upper stage. Fang Yuan had a great aptitude now. It was not a problem to break through to rank 5. But the higher a goo master's cultivation, the longer it would take to advance. Rank 5 middle stage, and this was after including the purple crystal relic goo in his possession. This level was many times better than the 500 years of his previous life. Right now, he was over 30, but was already rank 4 peak stage. In his previous life of 500 years, he was still struggling in rank 2 realm at this age. But this speed is still too slow. The Blessed Land has the 7th earthly calamity, and I have the internal threat of spring-autumn cicada. Fang Yuan calculated, in at most 3 years, he would have to leave the Blessed Land and go through a series of adventures. At least, he would have to find smooth success goo or instant success goo to use spring-autumn cicada and obtain more chances of survival. Sigh. If possible, I would like to be like Feng Jioga, cultivating in Hu Immortal Blessed Land until I reach Gu Immortal Realm, and then roam the world. Spring-autumn cicada could allow a goo master to revive, but there were many restrictions. Even if they succeeded, they would have to guard against it bursting their aperture. Without this major flaw, Fang Yuan's cultivation would be much easier. For the next 3 years, I will refine goo while using gut stones to strengthen the rock men, and sell them to exchange for all kinds of resources. But although Fang Yuan's plan was good, it could not compare to the teasing of fate. Chapter 430. Crack. Fang Yuan crushed the gut stone with one hand. Immediately, a lump of mud flowed out and stained his hand. Fang Yuan's gaze was extremely solemn as he casually picked up a pebble from the mountain and held it tightly in his hand. The yellow mud on his hand melted the pebble at a slow speed, turning the sturdy rock into even more mud. After a while, Fang Yuan could clearly feel the pebble in his hand shrinking. About 15 minutes later, the pebble completely turned into mud and disappeared. The yellow mud flowed through the gaps between Fang Yuan's fingers and onto Dang Hun Mountain, causing continuous damage to Dang Hun Mountain. Fang Yuan was silent for a while before slowly asking, "How serious is the situation?" Little Hu Immortal wiped her tears and replied while sobbing, "Right now, most of Dang Hun Mountain has already been corroded by the yellow mud. 6 out of 10 gut stones below the mountain waist are yellow mud. Master, what do we do? Dang Hun Mountain is going to die." Sob, sob, sob. "It's all my fault, I did not detect it in advance." Fang Yuan patted Little Hu Immortal's head and consoled, "This is not your fault, no need to blame yourself. The culprit is that swamp crab, it is truly a desolate beast, truly an earthly calamity." Land spirits had different abilities, they were all related to the Gu Immortal and the Blessed Land. He sighed and continued, "I was feeling lucky that the desolate beast did not have an immortal Gu. It turns out that this swamp crab had already used an expendable immortal Gu. The immortal Gu's power is hidden in the mud. Flesh and blood are fine, but the mountain rocks will suffer and will gradually be assimilated into mud. In the earthly calamity earlier, the swamp crab spat out large amounts of mud, from which a crab army emerged. Fang Yuan killed a vast number of crabs, but in fact, his true trump card was this yellow mud. Fang Yuan guessed that this should be the effect of the rank 6 Gruel Mud Gu. Gruel Mud Gu was a naturally formed Gu. There were many rank 1 and 2, while rank 3 and 4 were also common. They were often used by Gu masters to construct cities. Rank 5 Gu masters were rare, and when many rank 5 Gu masters did not have a powerful rank 5 Gu, they would often choose the Gruel Mud Gu and use it temporarily. At rank 6, there was only one in the entire world. Moreover, Gruel Mud Immortal Gu could only be used once. The Gruel Mud Gu could only be used on soil, so the swamp that swamp crabs lived in must have been affected by the immortal Gu. The swamp crab spat out mud from the swamp every day, thus it brought the power of the Gruel Mud Gu to Hu Immortal Blessed Land. After the mud crab died, although the battlefield had been cleaned, a large amount of yellow mud had seeped into the mountains and the earth. The immortal Gu Gruel Mud's power was so concealed, the yellow mud naturally did not have the slightest aura of the immortal Gu. If Fang Yuan had not arranged for the rock men to enter the mountain to knock on the rocks, they might not have found any clues. However, even if he discovered the truth in advance, when the earthly calamity arrived, he would not be able to escape. He did not have the ability to stop it. Fang Yuan's face darkened. Dang Hun Mountain was being corroded by the power of the immortal Gu, gradually turning into yellow mud. This was a grievous news. In the entire Hu Immortal Blessed Land, the most valuable thing was this mountain. He planned to use this mountain to nurture rock men and sell them. From now on, he would strengthen his soul. He still had to rely on this mountain, he could not sit back and watch the situation worsen. Immediately, Fang Yuan ordered Little Hu Immortal, "Try to get rid of the yellow mud. This way, the danger would be greatly alleviated." But Dang Hun Mountain's interior was also being corroded. This method could not cure the root of the problem. This was the power of the Gruel Mud Immortal Gu. To get rid of it, Fang Yuan had to borrow the power of other immortal Gu. "I took such a huge risk and luckily obtained a sacred land for strengthening my soul. Even if I become a Gu Immortal in the future, this Dang Hun Mountain will be of great use. I cannot let it be destroyed like this. Heaven does not want this sacred land to fall into the hands of humans, thus it sent down such an earthly calamity. Thus, I will go against heaven. Hee, fighting with humans, fighting with heaven, this is the joy of life." With Fang Yuan's knowledge, he was not at a loss of what to do. He thought of more than 10 solutions, eliminating the unrealistic ones. More than half of them were eliminated. After eliminating the more difficult ones, only 3 were left. The first was Earth Path rank 6 turn into Rock Gu. This Gu was currently in Western Desert, controlled by rank 6 Gu Immortal Sun Chen. Sun Chen was a righteous path Gu master, he used this Gu to turn sand into rock, allowing mortals to build cities in the desert, he was deeply grateful to mortals. He was soft-hearted and valued kinship, doting on his great-granddaughter the most. If Fong Yuan could capture his great-granddaughter as a hostage, he would definitely be able to make him submit. The second was also an Earth Path Rank 6 immortal goo, called Comeback Mountain. This goo had already appeared in the world, hidden in Eastern Sea's High-Shirt Blessed Land. Fong Yuan could enter the Blessed Land and use another immortal goo to exchange for this goo. The third was the Time Path Rank 6 immortal goo landscape as before. This goo had not been born yet, it was not formed naturally. Its owner, Tai Bai Yunsheng, was only a rank 5 goo master in Northern Plains. I refined fixed immortal travel immortal goo in front of everyone at Southern Border's San Cha Mountain. Needless to say, Southern Border is in an uproar right now. A mortal with an immortal goo, I'm afraid Southern Border's goo immortals have been alerted and are searching for me everywhere. Before Fong Yuan became a goo immortal, he would not even think of stepping into Southern Border. Although the 5 regions are independent, Southern Border's super clan, E-Clan, has connections with a mysterious force in Eastern Sea. It will take at least 2 to 3 years for the news of me refining an immortal goo to spread to Central Continent and other places. But Eastern Sea might not be the same. Fong Yuan first eliminated Eastern Sea. As for Western Desert, it is the most developed place in the world. Cities depend on the oases in the desert to survive. If I can sell the rockmen there, I will definitely make a huge profit. Unfortunately, the development of trade means the development of information and intelligence. I am a Southern Border goo master, I am definitely a fat sheep. If I go there, I might be noticed the moment I enter the city. Crane Gate might be an external threat, but Fong Yuan held the initiative. The other party might be powerful, but they could not control him for a period of time. His future prospects could be said to be good, everything was going smoothly, and everything was changing for the better. But right at this time, Dang Hun Mountain had a problem. To Hu Immortal Blessed Land, Dang Hun Mountain's importance was self-evident. Once this mountain had a problem, Fong Yuan's business plans collapsed, and his cultivation plans also went up in smoke. Because of this, Fong Yuan had no choice but to change his plans again. He left the Blessed Land and went on an expedition to Northern Plains. Fortunately, I planned ahead and made some preparations, otherwise I would be in a passive position now. In the next few months, Fong Yuan put all his energy into goo refinement. He used rank 4 Golden Cup Silver Light Cup goo, combined with rank 4 Side Push and Side Guide goo, and rank 4 Shift Form goo, to refine rank 5 Moving Cup goo. He then refined Dusty goo, Bright Pearl goo, Dark Cast goo, and Earth Treasury Flower King goo. Land Spirit, when I am not around, follow my arrangements. Before leaving, Fong Yuan instructed. Little Hu Immortal's eyes were red, she was reluctant to part. Master, I will wait for you here, you must return quickly. Saying so, she activated her Green Grape Immortal Essence and poured it into fixed Immortal Travel goo. This 100 Beast King's bones were instantly shattered, it was sent flying like a broken sack. After it landed on the ground, it howled and struggled, but it could not get up. Fong Yuan frowned slightly, he sent out another golden dragon. Only then did the poison-beard Wolf King die. Once the Wolf King died, the wolf group collapsed. In a few breaths of time, they escaped 100 li away. Only the Wolf King's corpse was left, and the young girl Guiyao looked at Fong Yuan blankly. Fong Yuan turned his deep and serene gaze towards this young girl. The young girl was wearing a leather robe unique to the Northern Plains. The long-sleeved robe was blue and white, the edges were embroidered with gold, it looked pure and noble. She had a purple gold belt around her waist, her thick black hair was adorned with many fine and beautiful hair accessories. His feet were clad in scarlet leather boots. Her skin was slightly dark, with a hint of red, it was the unique skin color of Northern Plains. Her figure was slim and fit, like a cute deer. Guiyao was forced to take a step back by Fong Yuan's gaze. She asked curiously, "Who are you? Are you the hero who came down from the longevity heaven to save me?" Before Fong Yuan could reply, she continued, I am a member of Gu tribe, my name is Gu Yao, my father is the tribe leader of Gu tribe. Young warrior, you saved my life, you will receive the warmest welcome from Gu tribe. Oh, I have not asked for your name. Fong Yuan laughed, beautiful grassland girl, you can call me Chang Shanin. The longevity heaven is where giant sun immortal lives, how could I come from there? I am only an ordinary Gu master. Saying so, he took out a wine cup from his aperture. The top half of the cup was gold, while the bottom half was silver. It was rank 5, used for storage. It was the moving perspective cup Gu that Fong Yuan refined in the Blessed Land. Immediately, Fong Yuan poured his primeval essence into it, and took out a set of clothes. This was a black tight-fitting battle attire. After Fong Yuan wore it, he gave off a heroic and steady aura. During the whole process, Gu Yao stared at him without blinking, her heart was pounding, and her face was flushed red. The young girls of the grassland were so passionate. Fong Yuan wore his clothes, and walked towards the poison-beard wolf king's corpse. Poison-beard wolves were a common type of wolf in northern plains. But different from other wolves, it did not have a single hair on its body was black, and its skin looked like it was coated with a layer of enamel. It did not have ears, and had 2 5-inch long feelers. When it ran, the feelers would hang at its sides. When it fought, the feelers would stand up high. Fong Yuan searched for a while, but did not find anything. This poison-beard wolf was a 100-beast king, and had a rank 2 Gu worm in its body. This wolf had 2 rank 2 Gu on it, acid water Gu and poison needle Gu. Acid water Gu could make it spit out green acid, corroding flesh and even iron and stone. Chapter 432. Even though this was Fong Yuan's intention, and Gu Yao also volunteered to join, Fong Yuan still said to her, "Take care of me? What do I need you to take care of me for?" Saying so, he glanced at her, his tone carrying some arrogance. The young girl immediately raised her head. "Do you know, poison grassland is covered in purple poisonous fog, breathing it for a long time will poison you. I have a Gu worm that can detoxify it. Also, the deeper you go into the grassland, the thicker the poisonous fog, and there are also ghosts and vengeful spirits. At that time, you will not be able to tell the direction, only my return heart Gu can point you to the correct way back." Gulp, the young girl was speaking when her stomach suddenly made a sound. Fong Yuan looked at her stomach, and the young girl's face instantly turned red. She stuttered as she explained that, "My big stomach horse was eaten by poison-beard wolves. Yuan stone and rations are all inside." Big stomach horse was a type of riding beast. It was very common in northern plains. It had 2 stomachs, one main stomach was used to digest food, while the other was used to store supplies. Northern plains Gu masters, when migrating, would use large numbers of these big stomach horses. Fong Yuan asked curiously, "Your father is the tribe leader of Gu tribe, and you are his daughter, why are you using such an ordinary riding beast?" Sigh, "It is because he took my Gu. I escaped alone, and was able to bring along a big stomach horse, and even prepare so many supplies, it is already very amazing." Gu Yao was a straightforward person, but after saying it, she felt it was inappropriate, and her expression froze, realizing she had said something wrong. "Escaped? Is it to escape marriage?" Fong Yuan raised his brows. The young girl exclaimed, her eyes wide open as she looked at Fong Yuan, "You have a mind-reading Gu. How did you know?" Fong Yuan laughed, he was only guessing, but it was not without evidence. In northern plains, women's status was much lower than men, they could even be treated as goods in the market, and be bought and sold casually. In southern border, there were female tribe leaders, but in northern plains, there were no such cases, women could not hold power. Why was it so? This tradition could be traced back to the era of the giant sun immortal. And in his memories, in these 3 years, northern plains was filled with heroes vying for supremacy, a storm was brewing. In the end, the He family's patriarch, He Lulan, succeeded in becoming the ruler of the imperial court for 10 years. He was also the most controversial ruler of the grassland in later generations. He Lulan was extremely lecherous. After he dominated the grasslands, he searched for beauties from all the tribes and took them into his harem. But on the other hand, he promoted new policies to raise the status of women in an attempt to make men and women equal. This severely violated the interests of all sides. It intensified the conflicts and caused the political system of Northern Plains to become unstable. Thus, He Lulan had only been the ruler of the grasslands for 2 years before she was tricked into leaving the royal court by her own people and assassinated. Soon after, all the tribes united to overthrow He tribe's rule and fight for the throne of the imperial court again. The bloody storm lasted for 5 years before it gradually subsided. After this battle, the various clans of the grassland went through a chaotic battle, and their vitality was greatly damaged. It would also be a failure for Zhongzhou state in the battle to attack the 4 regions in the future. Thus, many young girls in Northern Plains would often choose to escape from arranged marriages. The girl in front of him was the daughter of a tribe leader, but she came to Poison Grassland alone. Fong Yuan naturally had such a guess. Fong Yuan took out food from moving perspective cup Gu and gave it to Guyao. This girl was clearly extremely hungry. As she wolfed down the food, her eyes turned as she said in a muffled voice, "The one who wants to marry me is Man Duo from Man Tribe. He is the 3rd son of Man Tribe leader, he is thin and small like a monkey, and his body is frail and sickly, he only has rank 2 cultivation. Normally, he uses his father to bully the men and women in the tribe, he does not have any heroic spirit. I do not want to marry such a good-for-nothing. But Man Tribe is powerful, our good tribe has just migrated here and our strength is greatly reduced." Man Tribe's betrothal gift was very grand, they even promised to give a piece of fertile grassland to our good tribe. Father saw this and wanted to marry me off. In a fit of anger, I escaped. Warrior Chang Shan-in, why don't you kidnap me? Northern Plains people were fierce and had a custom, that was to kidnap a bride. The bride who was kidnapped was often more precious than the bride who was officially married. Fong Yuan laughed, I have no interest in you, quickly eat, we will continue our journey after you are full. Guyao's black eyes moved, there is another way, that is to marry into our good tribe. According to the rules of the grassland, only warriors can have beauties. Even if Man Tribe comes to find trouble, they will have to follow the rules and let that skinny monkey Man Duo fight you one-on-one. Warrior Chang Shan-in, you are so strong, you can definitely beat that Man Duo into a pig's head. Fong Yuan stopped smiling, I said I have no interest in you. Guyao, however, was even more passionate, showing the direct and unrestrained nature of Northern Plains women, why not? Am I not beautiful? I am the beauty of good tribe. That Man Duo saw me from afar and became infatuated with me, begging his father to propose marriage. Warrior Chang Shan-in, marrying into good tribe is also good for you. You are an outsider, if you do not marry into our tribe, others will not treat you as one of their own, you will always be ostracized and guarded against in Northern Plains. Fong Yuan said solemnly, I said before, I am a Northern Plainsman. Guyao laughed, Warrior, you can't lie to me. Your accent betrays your background, your food is not Northern Plains tea cakes and meat jerky. Just marry me, don't you feel that our meeting is arranged by the longevity heaven? Fong Yuan lowered his eyelids, a cold light flashed in his eyes as the smile on his face widened. Let me think about it first, you don't have to make a decision so hastily. Fong Yuan said as he took out Yuan stone and passed it to Guyao. Guyao nodded, then you have to think carefully, think carefully. She took the Yuan stone and said in a serious tone, I will return these Yuan stones to you. Fong Yuan nodded. Guyao did not speak anymore, instead concentrating on absorbing the Yuan stone to replenish her primeval essence and quickly recover her strength. He gave pointers to Guyao, not only to raise her battle strength, but also to probe the goo worms in her body. In the end, the young girl leaked all her details to Fong Yuan. Guyao was a water path goo master, rank 3 middle stage. She had the rank 3 fog sparrow goo for scouting, 3 claw water dragon goo and spiral water arrow goo for attacking, For defense, she had water armor goo. For movement, she had water trace goo. For healing, she had spring rain goo. She did not have storage goo, and the big stomach horse she used as a replacement had already died in the wolf group's hands. Other than that, she had cleansing goo for detoxification. Return heart goo for direction identification. This set of goo worms suited her identity. Fog sparrow goo was a very rare scouting goo among rank 3, it could condense fog into sparrows and fly around the surroundings, scouting the surroundings with a very wide range. Its defense and attack were also of high quality. Water trace goo's growth speed could almost match some rank 4 goo. The only flaw was that the footprints would contain water traces, making it easy to track. At the same time, it would wet the shoes. However, this goo had a lot of potential in its development. At rank 4, it could become wave trace goo, and its effect would be even stronger. At rank 5, there were 2 types of fusion paths. One was duck trace wave trace goo, which could be used to dodge on the spot. The other was river wave trace goo, which could move quickly on water. At rank 6, it would be the famous worldly wave trace goo. These goo were all of high quality rank 3. Adding on Fang Yuan's careful guidance and the pressure of the wolf group, it was no wonder that Guyao improved so quickly, and her battle strength rose steadily. Warrior Chang Shanyin, you are an incredible strategist. Your guidance is even more amazing than the best 3 elders in my tribe. Even if you look down on me, I will invite you to my good tribe as a guest. If you are interested, I will try my best to convince father to let you become an external elder in my tribe. Guyao turned around and walked to Fang Yuan's side, sincerely trying to recruit him. She was after all good tribe's young miss, and was knowledgeable. She knew Fang Yuan's value was not only his bravery, but more importantly, his ability to teach others. This was the power of wisdom. If he was around to nurture the tribe's next generation, the entire tribe would become stronger. I can go to good tribe as a guest, but I have no interest in becoming an external elder. Fang Yuan started walking again, shaking his head and refusing. Guyao tried to persuade him a few times, but Fang Yuan's attitude was firm. The young girl followed behind Fang Yuan gloomily, staring angrily at Fang Yuan's tall back. You think you are so amazing just because you know how to teach people, humph. I begged you so softly, but you are not moved. You are not even interested in becoming my good tribe's external elder? Ah! Meh, every time Ghost Cry Goo let out a shriek, a group of rattan shellgrass soldiers would fall. Ghost Cry Goo's sounds were also different. Some were sharp screams, some were like trembling sheep's cries, and some seemed to be complaining with hidden bitterness. Ghost, there are ghost faces rising up. The girl shuddered, looking at the pale and terrifying ghost faces floating up from the sea of sunflowers, her delicate body trembling in fear. Fang Yuan gently patted her hand, then calmly mobilized the puppets. Chapter 435. An hour and a half later. Fang Yuan carried Guyao as he landed on the ground. Guyao's legs were weak, her face was pale, she only recovered after taking a few breaths after landing on the ground. In the flight just now, she had killed at least 100 shadow crows, she had felt like she was struggling between life and death several times. The process of flying was filled with danger, not only did they meet with several waves of shadow crows, they even attracted the attacks of earth spike rats. When in danger, not only would there be countless shadow crows in the sky, the ground would also shoot out countless earth spikes. Under such attacks, Fang Yuan flapped his wings and flew, he continued to turn, dive, and rise. Searching for a possibility in the impossible, he charged out of the rain of attacks and found a chance of survival. I was actually able to survive under such attacks. This was the first thought that appeared in Guyao's mind when she landed on the ground. After the joy of surviving the calamity, the joy of disbelief, and the fear from recalling the past, Guyao looked at Fang Yuan with a complex expression, the latter was healing his injuries. Even if the young girl was ignorant, after this battle, she would recognize Fang Yuan's power in flying. Moreover, Guiyao was not an ordinary girl from the grassland, her father was the leader of a tribe. In her past life, Guiyao had been influenced by what she had seen and heard, her horizons were broadened and she knew much more than people of the same age. This man in front of me, his flying technique is actually so skilled and powerful. Is the soul of an eagle hidden in his majestic body? Such a flying technique can completely match Lightning Dong Pekong, Water Immortal Song Ching Yin, and Green Bat Wu Yi. This is the first-rate flying technique of Northern Plains. Chang Shanin, what kind of person are you? Fang Yuan quickly healed his injuries. Under the torrential attacks, no matter how powerful his flying technique was, he could not avoid getting hit. Most importantly, the rank 4 Bone Wings Gu was only equivalent to a rank 3 Gu in Northern Plains. At the same time, he was carrying a person, the increase in weight affected his agility. However, with Guiyao's help, the advantages outweigh the disadvantages. If she didn't use her water arrows and water dragons to kill the crows, and if she didn't use her water armor to protect me, my Jin Yuan alone would not have been enough. Fang Yuan thought. I am a southern border Gu master, when I go to Northern Plains, my cultivation will be suppressed. But fortunately, as time passes and I gradually integrate into Northern Plains, this suppression will lessen. Man was the spirit of all living things. He could adapt to his environment and blend in with it. Of course, when Fang Yuan completely integrated into Northern Plains and recovered his cultivation, when he returned to southern border, he would be suppressed again, he would need to adapt and fuse with it again. Humans can gradually blend into the environment, but Gu worms cannot. Southern borders Gu worms would continue to be weakened. These Gu on me consume the same amount of primeval essence as before, but their effectiveness is greatly reduced. Southern borders rank 4 Gu are inferior to Northern Plains rank 3 Gu. But after killing Guiyao, there was only a small chance that her Gu worms would end up in Fang Yuan's hands. Only by using Guiyao like this could he display the greatest value of this rank 3 middle stage Gu master. If not for Guiyao, I would not be able to advance so quickly. Although her Gu worms are good, I cannot obtain them. I need to change these southern border Gu worms, other than considering my battle strength, they are also a huge flaw in my concealment of my identity. I still need to go to that battlefield. Fang Yuan sighed inwardly and took out Bright Pearl Gu. Bright Pearl Gu had fixed immortal travel sealed inside, it was like a pure white amber. In front of Guiyao, Fang Yuan took out the dust Gu without any hesitation. The dust Gu was like a cocoon, it was dark gray in color and felt like sand in his hand. Fang Yuan injected his primeval essence and the dust Gu exploded into a puff of gray smoke. The gray smoke had its own intelligence and landed on the Bright Pearl Gu. The Bright Pearl Gu that was emitting a bright white light was covered by this dust and immediately became dim. The immortal Gu fixed immortal travel's aura weakened again. This was the dust of the treasure pearl. In the 500 years of Fang Yuan's previous life, when he went to Central Continent and caused the 5 regions' chaotic war, some Gu masters sneaked into other regions to fight and hide their identity and aura, so they developed this method. What are you doing? Guiyao asked curiously. Fang Yuan did not answer her, he kept the dark pearl and continued on his journey. The two continued to move forward, the poisonous fog in the air was getting thicker and thicker, the purple color was starting to affect their vision. The two had to stop more frequently and use Gu worms to get rid of the accumulated poison in their bodies. Crack! A crisp sound came from under their feet, as if they had stepped on a dried tree branch. Guiyao looked down in confusion, then screamed and quickly jumped back like a rabbit. Why is there a human skull here? Her voice was trembling. Because this place was originally a battlefield. Fang Yuan walked in front of her, he did not turn back and instead quickened his pace. Battlefield? Hey, wait for me, don't walk so fast. Guiyao quickly followed Fang Yuan's footsteps. The more she walked, the more shocked she became. Originally, the thick purple poisonous fog had blocked her vision, but now that she got closer, she saw that there were many white bones on the slightly rotten grass. There were human bones and also wolf bones. The ground was also filled with deep pits and trenches. It was clear that an intense battle had occurred here. So many people died. Who was it that fought a life and death battle here? But the deep pits and trenches were already filled with poisonous grass. Together with the other traces, this battlefield has at least 20 years of history. Guyao landed behind Fang Yuan. Seeing him searching as if he was looking for something, she immediately understood. So Chang Shan-yin's motive for entering poison grassland was this battlefield. What is he looking for? Wait a minute, there was indeed a huge battle in poison grassland 20 years ago. Father had talked to someone before. I was at the side. A memory surfaced from the depths of Guyao's mind. At that time, Guyao was still young, around 4 to 5 years old. Her father had invited a distinguished guest to a banquet and brought her with him. In the tent, the adults talked about the heroes of the grassland. But now that he had Guyao's help, he changed his plan and chose to fight. After fighting for over 4 hours, relying on Fang Yuan's tactic of restraining the enemy, the two bullied the white bone will's lack of intelligence. They took turns to breathe and gradually wore down the white bone will, finally causing it to fall to the ground. After the battle was decided, Fang Yuan immediately placed his hands on the white bone will and swept it with his will and primeval essence. The white bone will was a rank 5 gu, thus even rank 6 spring autumn cicada and fixed immortal travels aura could not help Fang Yuan refine it instantly. But the wheel was full of cracks and almost fell apart. It was in a terrible state and was on the verge of destruction. Fang Yuan had 100-man soul. He was full of vigor and his will was like steel. He poured his primeval essence into it and spent another 15 minutes before he finally subdued it. From then on, hatred was formed, and because of the subsequent events, the hatred deepened until it could only be washed away with each other's lives and blood. After Hatu Gu poisoned Chang Shan-yin's mother, Chang Shan-yin led his wolf group deep into poison grassland to find the snow wash Gu. After that, Chang Shan-yin set up an ambush here, and when Hatu Gu charged in with the horse bandits, large groups of wolves came from all directions. This tragic life and death battle was fought until the heavens and the earth darkened. Eventually, the wolf group was annihilated, and the horse bandits either died or escaped. Chang Shan-yin, who was at the end of his rope, fought with Hatu Gu, who had exhausted his primeval essence. Both of them were in a frenzy, using everything they could. They wrestled with each other, using their teeth to bite, using their hands to dig, using all the strength in their bodies, before both of them collapsed on the ground, without even the strength to breathe. These two mortal enemies, once the closest companions, were only 2 to 3 steps away from each other, but they could only pant and stare at each other. They were both strong Gu masters. One was a glorious hero, the other was a notorious demon, but both of them had lost their strength. At this moment, they were as weak as children. Even if a rabbit ran over and blocked their mouths, they would suffocate to death. After a moment of deadlock, Hatu Gu suddenly laughed loudly. He was after all a rank 5 Gu master. His primeval essence recovery speed was faster than Chang Shan-yin's. His primeval essence recovered first. It was enough for him to use the poisonous bone spear once. Seeing the bone spear shooting towards him, Chang Shan-yin's eyes opened wide. A miraculous trace of strength burst forth in this desperate situation. Using this bit of strength, he struggled to turn half his body, but the poisonous bone spear that was aimed at his head still pierced his chest. The intense pain made Chang Shan-yin roar in anger. Using the wolf strength Gu to amplify his strength, he broke the thin bone spear. Holding it in his hand, he dragged his body step by step to Hatu Gu's side. Finally, Chang Shan-yin stabbed the green spear tip into Hatu Gu's eye socket, killing this mortal enemy of his. Although Chang Shan-yin won, the poison on the bone spear had already spread throughout his body. Using the primeval essence that he had just recovered, he activated the wolf fetus earth burial Gu. This Gu was refined from 108 different kinds of pregnant female wolves. It was specially used to save lives. As long as there was a trace of life force, it would be able to keep them alive. Chang Shan-yin used this Gu and burrowed into the ground, falling into a deep sleep, struggling at death's door. After over 30 years, Ma Hongyun, who was still a rank 3 goo master, was chased here by the wolf group. In a desperate situation, he unexpectedly found Chang Shan-yin, who was buried underground. After Ma Hongyun saved Chang Shan-yin, the latter not only helped him repel the wolf group, he even worked hard for him and became one of the 4 great generals in order to repay him for saving his life. In the struggle for dominance in the grassland, he made countless contributions and pushed Ma Hongyun, who was originally a slave, to the throne of the Lord of the Imperial Court. Chang Shan-yin's life was full of ups and downs. He was a legend. When he reappeared in the world, his story was widely spread in northern plains. It was not a secret. Later, with Ma Hongyun's help, he cultivated to rank 7 Gu Immortal Realm and obtained the title of Sky Wolf General, gaining even more authority. Finally, he resisted the invasion of Central Continent and died in battle. His descendants wrote his biography. This was also the reason why Fang Yuan was so clear about the process. "Oh, I found it." After a long search, there was finally a result. Fang Yuan's footsteps paused as he found a huge wolf tail on the grassland. This wolf tail was covered in mud and was mostly covered by poisonous grass. It was almost invisible. If not for Fang Yuan already having a target and carefully searching, he would not have found it. Back then, when Ma Hongyun was escaping, he tripped on this wolf tail. After he pulled out this wolf tail, he saved Chang Shan-yin and himself. Fang Yuan was overwhelmed with emotions. He grabbed the wolf tail and pulled it out. Immediately, the ground rumbled and a huge female wolf's body was brought out. Her eyes were closed, her body was covered in purple fur and her belly was snow white. Her body was huge. Even when she was lying down, she was as tall as a person. Guiyao quickly ran over with a surprised expression. "What wolf is this? Why is it so big?" "Oh my, it looks like a female wolf. Look at her bulging belly, she must be pregnant." "This is not a wolf, it is a gu," Fang Yuan said as he took out a sharp dagger from the moving perspective cup gu. He stabbed the dagger into the wolf's belly and forcefully made a long cut. Instantly, the swollen belly split open and large amounts of amniotic fluid mixed with blood gushed out of the wound, drenching Fang Yuan's lower body. Guiyao saw that the situation was bad and quickly jumped back to prevent herself from being implicated. Next, she opened her mouth in shock, shouting, "Why is there a person in the wolf fetus?" Along with the amniotic fluid, there was another person. It was the real Chang Shan-yin. His eyes were closed and his body was riddled with injuries, especially the half-bone spear that was stuck in his chest. His whole body was covered in sticky amniotic fluid. His expression was painful and his skin was pale green. Fang Yuan quickly squatted down and stretched out his hands, seemingly inspecting Chang Shan-yin's injuries, but in fact, he was secretly pinching Chang Shan-yin's neck. The pitiful Chang Shan-yin was a hero. He successfully killed his mortal enemy and used gu worms to extend his life for over 20 years. Originally, in another 10 years or so, a fated monarch would have come to save him. But now, Fang Yuan interfered and killed this future influential figure, the famous Sky Wolf General, a future rank 7 Gu Immortal. Chang Shan-yin was already at his last breath. He had no consciousness and could not defend himself. He only had a weak breath left. When Fang Yuan killed him, his body did not even tremble. Not to mention using his consciousness to detonate the gu worms. Fang Yuan's consciousness entered his aperture and immediately found several turtle breath gu inside. Turtle breath gu was a storage gu, similar to bright pearl gu, used to seal gu worms. Before Chang Shan-yin entered the wolf's stomach, to prevent the gu worms in his body from starving to death, he sealed them one by one in the turtle breath gu. These rank 4 gu were like oval-shaped rocks, slightly bigger than a fist. The surface of the rocks was covered in veins, making people think of a turtle shell. Once spring-autumn cicadas aura leaked out, Fang Yuan instantly refined these turtle breath gu. He took out all these turtle breath gu and under Guiyao's curious gaze, he crushed them one by one, revealing the gu worms inside. A total of 8 gu worms, all belonging to the enslavement path. They were all rare rank 4 gu. Among them, some were even more precious than ordinary rank 5 gu. Chang Shan-yin used this set of goo worms to make a name for himself in northern plains. He then used this goo to kill a rank 5 enemy. Using spring-autumn cicada, Fang Yuan kept all of them for his own use. He cut from his neck all the way to his abdomen. But the strange thing was, his blood did not flow out, he had already prepared the hemostasis goo. Next, Fang Yuan expressionlessly moved the dagger around his body, then he stretched out his hand and peeled off the skin on his chest. When the young girl saw this horrifying scene, she couldn't help but take a few steps back. Her face was as pale as a sheet of paper. Fang Yuan gritted his teeth and willed, the colorful smoke in the air floated over and covered his chest. Swoosh swoosh swoosh, with a strange sound, Fang Yuan's exposed bloody tendons were covered by a new layer of skin. But the strange thing was, although this layer of skin had just grown, it was not as delicate as a baby's, but pale and old skin. Next, Fang Yuan did the same thing, peeling off the skin on his arms and legs and growing new skin. This, don't tell me. Guiyao gradually realized something and was tongue-tied. Peeling off the skin on his back was a little troublesome, Fang Yuan spent a lot of effort and finally succeeded. Finally, the most crucial part was the skin on his face. Fang Yuan stopped and rested for a while before raising the dagger and pointing it at his eyelids. Guiyao's body trembled, but Fang Yuan's hands were as steady as iron, every movement was precise and precise. He first cut off his eyelids, then along his eye sockets, the tip of the dagger went out to his ears, then along his cheeks to his chin. Turning his chin, he cut to the other side, finally forming a complete circle. Next, Guiyao saw Fang Yuan peeling off the skin on his face, her heart pounded and she felt her legs go soft. The colorful smoke floated over, giving him new skin on his face. Next, Fang Yuan changed the skin on the back of his neck, behind his ears, and on his scalp. When he turned around and faced Guiyao, he was a completely different person, he had turned into Chang Shan-yin. I said, I am Chang Shan-yin. He spoke with a plain tone. Guiyao looked at Fang Yuan in disbelief. Fang Yuan's voice was in the purest Northern Plains accent. Fang Yuan could speak in a Northern Plains accent, it was just that he did not say it before. You. She pointed at Fang Yuan, her body trembling and her face pale, her expression filled with fear. Fang Yuan laughed in disdain. The human body is like a bag of skin, it is just a change of skin, why are you making such a fuss? The so-called beauty and ugliness are superficial and weak things. If it was on earth, it would be fine if the human strength was exhausted and the path to immortality was severed. In this world, only eternal life was worth pursuing. As for this human skin goo, it was a recipe developed by goo masters hundreds of years later, during the 5 Regions' chaotic war. It could allow a goo master to disguise as another person, with no difference in appearance. Many Central Continent goo masters relied on the human skin goo to infiltrate the enemy's headquarters, assassinate and wreak havoc, greatly boosting Central Continent's offensive, causing the other 4 regions' people to be fearful and suspicious of each other. Ignoring the girl who was scared out of her wits, Fang Yuan stood on the spot, slowly raising his hands in front of his eyes. Now, his hands had completely changed. Every fingerprint and handprint on his hands was the same as Chang Shan-yin's. Then, he reached out and touched his chest. His chest was originally smooth and flat, but now there was chest hair, extending from his throat all the way to his crotch. He touched his face, and the first thing he felt was the straight nose of the Northern Plains people, and then his rough cheeks. He took out a mirror and looked at himself. His face was completely Chang Shan-yin's face, even the hair that had grown out was the same as his. Even the white hair on his temples was the same. Human skin goo was the main material used to refine goo using human skin. In fact, its transformation was comprehensive. Not only the skin, but also the hair, the color of the pupils, the shape of the bones, and even the old wounds could be replicated vividly. Guiyao looked at the current Fang Yuan, it was like she was looking at a dead person coming back to life. You, who are you? She stared at Fang Yuan, her gaze filled with vigilance and alertness. Fang Yuan smiled, saying warmly, I said, I am Chang Shan. Do you think I am a fool? I saw the entire process with my own eyes. You are an outsider. Don't use our Northern Plains accent to speak. The girl screamed, she could not take it anymore, her expression showing signs of insanity. Fang Yuan stared at her with a burning gaze, his face showing the vicissitudes of life. He sighed emotionally, little girl, don't worry, I have no ill intentions towards you. I am indeed Chang Shan. From the moment we met, I did not lie to you. Then how do you explain everything that just happened? The girl questioned. Fang Yuan raised his head, his gaze skipping over the girl, looking at the sky. His gaze was like smoke. He spoke in a reminiscing tone, little girl, have you heard of soul possession? Soul possession? Guyao was slightly stunned, her gaze flickered and her tone was uncertain. You are talking about soul possession? Fang Yuan spoke slowly, explaining with a gentle attitude, it seems you have heard of it. That's right, I was on the verge of death, and with no one to save me, I could only use this method and escape with my soul. Poison grassland is covered in dark clouds all year round, the sun cannot be seen, thus my soul can roam freely here. I roamed for over 20 years before finding the chance to possess an outsider goo master. When I used my goo worm to teleport here, I coincidentally met you. Is that so? Is that really the case? He. If I wanted to harm you, I would have killed you long ago. Why would I let you follow me and even teach you how to fight? Although you say that, if I wanted to guard against you, I would not have let you see these things. You are a Northern Plains native, the great Chang Shan would not be so despicable as to lay my hands on a little girl like you. Why did I only succeed after over 20 years? It is because I am not willing to slaughter Northern Plains people for my own selfishness. Little girl, you won't attack me because of an outsider, right? Fang Yuan's smile was like the sun, his tone filled with righteousness. Guyao's thoughts gradually drifted. She thought, what kind of person was Fang Yuan? The shock when they first met, the warmth when he smiled, the wisdom when he gave her pointers, the unparalleled bravery in battle, and the coldness when he peeled off her skin. These scenes flashed in the young girl's mind, the impression was so deep that it was carved into the depths of her heart. What about his past? Guyao could not help but think. Chang Shan-yin's past had already become a legend of a hero, widely spread in Northern Plains. Countless people respected him, loved him, and thought well of him. When he was young, he was the future hope of Chang tribe. He became famous very early on, his top-notch wolf manipulation skills made people look at him in a different light. Most importantly, he was upright, fair, generous, and friendly. He never bullied the weak, was filial to his parents, and helped his tribesmen in trouble. At the same time, he had a strong sense of brotherhood, risking his life many times to protect his homeland, and made great contributions to Chang tribe. He married a beautiful wife, but faced the betrayal of his childhood friend. Fate was merciless, causing this man to lose his mother, his sworn brother, his beautiful wife, and even almost lost his life. But he survived in the end. Relying on his own hard work, he struggled out of the abyss of death, creating an unimaginable miracle. This man is carrying endless pain on his shoulders, and hidden in the dark are countless scars. Guyao thought of this and had an impulse to hug Fang Yuan, using her warmth to comfort this injured lone wolf, the former wolf king. The bonfire flickered, the wood crackled. Guyao's gaze on Fang Yuan's face became more and more affectionate, gradually becoming unable to extricate herself. In the warm light of the fire, there was a kind of emotion brewing and growing in the young girl's heart. When Fang Yuan finished this round of exchanging cups and started to take out primeval stones to absorb the primeval essence, Guyao inwardly made the most important decision in her life. She suddenly stood up, shouting at Fang Yuan, Fang Yuan, be my husband. Her voice traveled through the vast grassland in the deep night, going far away. What did you say? Fong Yuan frowned. Even with his 500 years of experience, he did not expect the young girl to suddenly change her mind. After reacting, he smiled. Don't mess around, little girl, I am your senior. According to age, I am 20 years older than you. My son is a good match for you. The young girl's expression froze. She struggled to break free from Fong Yuan's embrace. She lowered her head and looked at her chest. There was a sharp dagger stuck there. A fatal blow. Whether it was to the body or the soul. Why? Guyao looked at Fong Yuan in disbelief. Her delicate body swayed, her eyes filled with anger, hatred, shock and doubt. Fong Yuan looked at the young girl and spoke expressionlessly. He said the story in The Legends of Renzu. The rockman saw that desolate Guyue had kept his true heart and could not help but feel anxious. He said, "Heartless girl, your coldness makes me despair. Since I can't exchange for your love, then please return my sincerity to me. Without it, I will die." But Guyue did not return it to him. She watched as he slowly died. Why? I love you so much, why do you want to kill me? Before the rockman died, he shouted in confusion. Desolate Guyue looked at him pitifully. Her voice was still calm. Oh rockman, I did not want to kill you. But you blocked my path to success. Path to success. Guyao heard this reply and could not hold on anymore, collapsing on the ground. The dense aura of death caused her body to rapidly turn cold. The young girl raised her head, revealing a swan-like graceful neck. She looked at the dark night sky and laughed miserably. She only laughed 3 times, but her face was filled with tears. Then she looked at Fong Yuan. Her gaze was still as affectionate as before. Chang Shan Yin. I do not know how I blocked your path to success. But even if you kill me, I will not hate you. Maybe you want to take revenge? I will leave all my goo worms to you. I hope they can help you in your path to success. Cough cough cough. The young girl coughed out blood. She laughed miserably, pleading to Fong Yuan, I am going to die. Before I die, I have a small request. I hope you can hug me. I miss your warm embrace. But Fong Yuan did not move. He looked at the young girl coldly. He looked at the young girl, seeing her expression harden bit by bit, her life slipping away bit by bit. In the end, the flower-like young girl turned into an ice-cold corpse. Fong Yuan looked at Guyao's face and fell into a long silence. It was much faster and more convenient to ride the hump wolf. When Fong Yuan accidentally found this wolf den, he killed all the weak female wolves and their pups, and obtained a rank 2 wolf enslavement goo. He was not in a hurry to leave, but hid the poison-beard wolf and waited for the male wolf to return. The battle between the hump wolf and the poison-beard wolf group had reached its climax the moment it started. The hump wolf's body was huge, and its anger made it even more ferocious when it fought. It waved its claws, and ordinary poison-beard wolves were not its match. But under Fong Yuan's command, the poison-beard wolves were extremely crafty. They did not fight head-on, but cooperated with each other, advancing and retreating, wearing down the hump wolf's battle strength. After an hour, the hump wolf was gasping for breath. It was no longer as valiant as before. Beside it, there were over 60 poison-beard wolf corpses. These were its glorious battle achievements. Of course, if Fong Yuan wanted to kill it, with Fong Yuan's enslavement path attainment, he would only need to pay the price of 30 poison-beard wolves. But Fong Yuan wanted to capture it alive, thus he could not help but feel his hands and feet being tied in battle. The time is about right. Fong Yuan looked at the hump wolf's trembling limbs in the wind as he slowly walked down the hill, getting closer carefully. Right now, most of his goo worms had been moved to Hu Immortal Blessed Land through moving perspective cup goo. When he was 200 steps away from the hump wolf, Fong Yuan flicked his finger, activating the rank 2 wolf enslavement goo. Wolf enslavement goo exploded, turning into a light smoke that covered the hump wolf. The hump wolf quickly retreated, but the light smoke followed it closely. The hump wolf howled, charging towards Fang Yuan. But it met with the obstruction of the poison-beard wolves. After a few breaths of time, the light smoke completely fused into its body. The hump wolf laid on the ground weakly, its body was covered in bleeding wounds, its bloodshot eyes no longer looked at Fang Yuan with hatred, but showed a sense of submission. 100-man's soul is indeed useful. If I did not use guts goo, I would need to expend some effort to enslave this hump wolf. Fang Yuan sighed inwardly, before activating the wolf smoke goo in his aperture. Wolf smoke goo flew out, turning into thick smoke that enveloped the hump wolf and most of the injured poison-beard wolves. After a while, the smoke dispersed, the hump wolf's wounds were completely healed, it even grew new fur. The injured poison-beard wolves also recovered their vitality. However, even though they were uninjured, their battle strength was not at their peak. What affected the beast group's battle strength was not just their injuries, but also their hunger. The wolf group had to display their greatest battle strength, they could not be too hungry, or they would become weak. They could not be too full, or their battle strength would be affected. When the hump wolf hunted earlier, why did it wait patiently for the gray rabbit to return after it was full? It was the same logic. Only when the wolf group was in a half-starved state would they be able to fight more fiercely and cruelly. After fighting for such a long time, be it the hump wolf or the poison-beard wolves, they had expended a lot of their stamina, they were hungry. Fang Yuan willed, and the poison-beard wolves started to eat the corpses on the ground. The camel wolf swallowed the gray rabbit into its stomach, and then under Fang Yuan's forceful command, it also ate the dead female wolf and cubs. Fang Yuan stood on the spot, taking out his rations and eating them with cold water. 3 days had passed since he killed Guyao. Guyao was bound to die, the moment she saw fixed immortal travel, she was destined to die. Furthermore, she had seen Fang Yuan arrive naked in northern plains, and saw him bury the immortal Gu, as well as the scene of him using moving perspective Gu. She knew too many things, in Fang Yuan's heart, she was a target he had to kill. But Fang Yuan had just arrived, his battle strength was weak, Guyao could be of help to him in poison grassland. But Guyao could not live, her naivety could be used by Fang Yuan, and others could make use of her as well. Such a burden, with the soul of a normal person, as long as she was hit by someone else's mind-reading Gu or memory Gu, Fang Yuan's arrangements would become a joke, and the secrets that he had been hiding would be exposed to the public. Fang Yuan's killing was premeditated. As Guyao charged through the sea of ghost-face sunflowers, the earth-drilling rat group, the shadow crow's obstruction, and found Chang Shanin, changing his skin, finding the snow-wash Gu, and burying the earth treasury flower king Gu, her value was gradually decreasing. At the same time, her threat level was also increasing. Her love for Fang Yuan made Fang Yuan, who was disguised as Chang Shanin, feel like there was a fishbone stuck in his throat and a dagger on his back. A woman in love would naturally try to understand the person she loved, including the present, future, and past. What would happen when she found out the truth? Furthermore, she had a tribe behind her, she was the young miss of the tribe. Being in love with such a person, no matter how low profile Fang Yuan kept, he would become the center of attention. Don't forget that Man tribe's second young master, Man Duo, was extremely infatuated with Guyao's beauty. If Fang Yuan returned with Guyao, he would definitely become the target of Gu tribe and Man tribe. Why should he attract so much hatred for a burden? Fang Yuan was not afraid of hatred, but he did not come to northern plains for a holiday. His time was tight, it was a race against time. Danghun Mountain was dying step by step, spring-autumn cicada was recovering step by step, but his cultivation was still at rank 4 peak stage. He had to succeed, there could be no failure. Once he failed, he would be consigned to eternal damnation, not even his bones would be left. The path he walked was destined to be lonely, there were only 2 outcomes, either success or destruction. Thus, when the two got close to the periphery of poison grassland, Fang Yuan took advantage of the fact that there were few people around and it was convenient for him to kill. After killing Guyao, Fang Yuan ordered the poison-beard wolves to eat her up. Her soul was not spared either, it was swallowed by the soul burial toad and was now in the blessed land, completely destroyed by Dang Hun Mountain. The traces left by the bonfire were also carefully removed by Fang Yuan, not leaving behind any hidden dangers. In short, Guiyao had completely disappeared from this world. The only trace left was probably the excrement of the poison-beard wolves. He. The so-called beauty, in the end, was just a handful of dirt. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Beautiful young girls were like fresh flowers in this world. They would either be stepped on by the roadside, or wither away as time passed, becoming ugly fertilizer to nourish the soil. Without eternal life, even the most beautiful things are just an illusion. The value of their existence is just for a moment of beauty. The more Fang Yuan experienced, the more he realized the cruelty of the world. Without eternal life, even the most valuable things would be worthless. The so-called immortal reputation, infamy, is just the shallow thoughts of those grandchildren. The so-called immortal spirit is just a tool used by the younger generation to prove themselves. Can people really only prove each other? On Earth, so be it. In this world, even if there is an extremely faint possibility, I will still pursue it. Even if I die on the path of pursuing, and die 1,000 times uglier than Guiyao, I will not regret it. Fang Yuan had already made up his mind to die. However, only by dedicating his entire life's energy to his pursuit could he die without the slightest bit of regret. Ha! Who could understand the heart of a transmigrator like Fang Yuan? The path he walked was destined to be endless darkness, destined to be incomparably lonely. The direction of his pilgrimage was only the light in his heart, eternal life, a tiny possibility that did not exist. In this world, no one could understand him. And him. Fang Yuan looked back. The poison grassland was still covered in dark clouds, the light was dim and the wind was chilly. On the poison grassland, there were purple-black poisonous grasses growing in strange shapes. Compared to the grassland where the sunlight shone, it was a stark contrast, as if they were two different worlds. The eastern part of Hu immortal blessed land is also covered in thick clouds. If I do not deal with it in time, that area might develop towards the direction of the poison grassland. Poison grassland. I will return. Fang Yuan muttered, as he spoke, his body suddenly felt light. Ever since he entered northern plains, he had felt uneasy, as if there was a formless restriction shrouding his body. Now that this restriction had been reduced by a portion, Fang Yuan immediately felt that he was closer to this vast world. His aura also rose, from rank 3 peak stage to rank 4 initial stage. Fang Yuan could not help but laugh heartily at his joyous mood. His body was gradually adapting to northern plains, his cultivation was recovering, this was a great help to his future plans. Northern plains, I am coming. Fang Yuan shouted, his legs squeezing the wolf's abdomen. The hump wolf started to run, leading the poison-beard wolves into the distance. Kill! Battle cries reverberated on the hill, dozens of Gu masters and over 1,000 wind wolves were engaged in an intense battle. The battle had already been going on for 15 minutes. These damned wind wolves! Leader Gu Guang cursed, his expression was malevolent as he waved his saber, beheading a wind wolf in front of him. But after chopping down, his saber broke into two. The half-blade in Gu Guang's hand had long since curled up. Howl! A wind wolf suddenly jumped, pouncing towards Gu Guang. Young tribe leader, be careful. Spiral water arrow. The Gu master behind Gu Guang shouted anxiously. Hearing this shout, Gu Guang, who had developed a tacit understanding from years of battle, didn't even think before he suddenly bent down. It looked like he was offering his head to the wolf's mouth. The wind wolf that was jumping in the air opened its mouth, revealing its sharp teeth. Just as it was about to bite Gu Guang's head, a blue water arrow with a strong spiral force shot towards Gu Guang's back. Next, this spiral water arrow fiercely shot into the wind wolf's mouth, killing it instantly. Using this chance, Guguang squeezed the wolf's abdomen, urging the humped wolf to retreat, retreating into everyone's defensive circle. Saber Gu. He clasped his hands together, squeezing out the last trace of primeval essence from his aperture, before injecting it into the saber imprint on his palm. Swoosh! Guguang swung his right hand fiercely, and a brand new saber formed in an instant, which he held tightly in his hand. Die! He roared, his voice already hoarse like iron. The new saber was extremely sharp, drawing a cold light in the air, directly cutting a wind wolf into two. However, this small victory could hardly have a positive impact on the overall declining situation. Damn it, I don't have enough primeval essence. There are too many wind wolves, at least 3,000 of them. Young tribe leader, we are completely surrounded. There is no hope in fighting to the death. Why don't we break through towards the east? The defense there is the weakest. The surrounding Gu masters shouted one after another. Guguang's tiger eyes shone with divine light as he sized up the area, resolutely rejecting, no, there is a puddle in the east. The defense seems weak, but it is actually a facade created by the Wind Wolf King. Once we enter, we will be walking into its trap. Then what should we do? Everyone asked. Guguang gritted his teeth, making up his mind. Turn around, we will go back and break through towards the west. But we still haven't found Lady Guyao. If we return like this, how will we report to Lord Tribe Leader? Guguang snorted. Although Guyao is my sister, for her own selfishness, she disregarded the entire Gu tribe situation and ran away from the marriage. For a mere girl, she is sacrificing us good men, it is not worth it. Send the order, we will break through. Let those dirty slaves stay behind to guard the rear. It is time for them to sacrifice their lives for master. Yes. Everyone quickly conveyed the order. Northern Plains tribes fought all year round. Some of the defeated Gu masters became slaves. Slaves had low status, and when necessary, they would be mercilessly discarded as cannon fodder. Soon, the Gu masters split into two groups. A pair of slaves stayed on the slope, using their lives to obstruct the enemy. The other group, under Guguang's lead, started to break through towards the west. Kill, kill, kill. Guguang charged at the front line, riding a hump wolf as he waved his saber, wild and brave. Protect young master. The Gu masters behind him were all tall and sturdy Northern Plains men. They rode hump wolves and closely gathered around Guguang. Swoosh! Suddenly, a huge three-leafed wind blade shot over. Young master! A loyal Gu master shouted in warning, being the first to react. He did not have a trace of primeval essence in his aperture, so he rode the hump wolf to the front, using his body to block the wind blade. Without any surprise, he was cut into two by the wind blade, dying instantly. The wind blade weakened to two leaves, but still slashed towards Guguang. Guguang reacted, quickly raising his saber to block. Bam! The wind blade exploded, the saber shattered, and Guguang vomited a mouthful of blood, falling down from the hump wolf's back. Young tribe leader. The Gu masters behind him quickly protected him, but this way, they failed to break through the encirclement. An endless stream of wind wolves surrounded them from both sides, once again firmly surrounding them. The wind wolf group quietly opened up a path, and the vigorous and beautiful wind wolf king slowly walked along this path, arriving in front of everyone. Thousand Beast King. Its body was huge, like a warhorse. Its body was covered in neat dark green wolf fur, and its eyes were like emeralds. As it slowly walked, it actually gave Guguang and the others a feeling of elegance and nobility. At this time, the slave Gu masters guarding the top of the hill had already been exterminated. Large groups of wind wolves attacked from behind. The Gu masters had already exhausted their primeval essence, and the Wind Wolf King's arrival caused a commotion. Someone wanted to drag Guguang back, but Guguang swung his arm and struggled to stand up, shouting, "What are you afraid of? Even without primeval essence, I still have my fists and teeth. Warriors, don't let these beasts look down on you. Use our blood to prove that we are brave Gu tribesmen." Everyone was encouraged by him, and their morale rose, as they all had the will to die. The Wind Wolf King slowed down, and suddenly turned its head, looking towards the east side of the battlefield. Chapter 443. The Poison-Beard Wolf Group did not stop, they charged towards the Wind Wolf Group. Poison-Beard Wolves. Soon, the Goo Masters saw the Poison-Beard Wolf Group, they raised their heads and looked. Strange, don't Poison-Beard Wolves only live in Poison Grassland, why are they outside? The Goo Masters were puzzled. They should be driven by a Goo Master. Guguang clenched his fists, looking at the approaching Poison-Beard Wolf Group, his eyes that were filled with despair started to shine with hope. Young Master is wise, look over there is someone. A few breaths later, a Goo Master pointed far away and shouted. Under everyone's attentive gazes, Fang Yuan rode the hump wolf and appeared in everyone's vision. We are saved. Everyone cheered. Not necessarily. Guguang squinted, he was clear-headed, there are less than 1,000 Poison-Beard wolves, it will depend on this person's wolf enslavement skill. With his reminder, the Goo Masters started to worry. This person should be an enslavement path Goo Master, but he does not have many Poison-Beard wolves. Not good, the Poison-Beard wolves are under sunlight, their battle strength is weakened, they are slightly weaker than the Wind Wolves. Oh no, this enslavement path Goo Master does not even have 1,000 Beast King with him. With only a few hundred Beast Kings, how can he block the Wind Wolf King's charge? Guguang suddenly spoke, no problem, as long as this Goo Master gathers the Poison-Beard wolves at one spot and charges through the formation, there is a chance of saving us. These words greatly alleviated everyone's worries. But just as their hope was ignited, Fang Yuan willed, and the entire Poison-Beard Wolf Group was like a bucket of water that was poured out, crashing onto the ground and scattering. This. Many Goo Masters were tongue-tied. It's over. He's digging his own grave. Some people simply closed their eyes. Idiot, he wasted such a chance. Some Goo Masters stomped their feet in anger. They were extremely disappointed, they cursed, some even started to hate Fang Yuan. Guguang's expression turned pale, as long as there was a chance to live, who would want to die? Fang Yuan's appearance gave everyone hope. But this person destroyed this hope with his own hands. The Wind Wolf King howled, and the entire pack of Wind Wolves launched a counterattack. Just as the two wolf packs were about to clash, Fang Yuan suddenly let out a long howl. He was a human, but at this moment, he howled like a wolf. The cry was desolate and wild, like a bonfire swaying in the night wind. The wolf howls covered a radius of 800 steps. All the Poison-Beard wolves within this range went berserk when they heard the howls. They suddenly exploded with twice their fighting strength. Ah, this is a rank 4 wolf howl goo, it can raise the battle strength of a wolf group, it is an extremely rare goo. This person is actually a rank 4 Goo Master. Fang Yuan's wolf howl could be said to be earth-shattering, causing the Goo Master's expressions to change. Hope blossomed in many pairs of despairing eyes once again. Rank 4 and Rank 3 were two different concepts. Rank 3 was Clan Elder, Rank 4 was Clan Leader. Even Guguang was only at Rank 3 upper stage. After recognizing Fang Yuan's cultivation, no one cursed him anymore. Northern Plains Goo Masters might be brave, but they were not arrogant and unruly. They were filled with respect towards the strong, and humility towards strength. The Poison-Beard Wolves were originally weaker than the Wind Wolves, but now that their battle strength rose, they were even stronger than the Wind Wolves. In just a while, the Wind Wolf group was forced to retreat, and there were large numbers of Wind Wolf corpses on the battlefield. Often, 10 Wind Wolves would die, only one Poison-Beard Wolf would be sacrificed. What kind of exquisite wolf enslavement skill is this? Such a casualty ratio made Goo Tribe's Goo Master's eyes pop out. Unimaginable. This is the attainment of a beast enslavement master. Who is this person? Many people looked at Fang Yuan as if they were looking at a monster. I've never heard of such a hidden expert in the vicinity. Everyone was naturally surprised and overjoyed. Fang Yuan's strength made the Wind Wolf group focus their attention on the poison-beard wolves. They only surrounded Gu tribe's Gu masters and did not attack, giving these people precious time to breathe. The Wind Wolf King has moved. Gu Guang suddenly spoke, his words made everyone nervous again. The Wind Wolf King had extraordinary intelligence, it howled and quickly gathered a large number of elites. Soon, with the Wind Wolf King as the shoulder, this group of elites shot into the formation like an arrow, charging towards the center and attacking Fang Yuan. Enslavement Path Gu masters were most afraid of beheading the leader tactic, and this Wind Wolf King was a thousand-beast king. Now that it was charging with the elites of the wolf group, it was simply unstoppable. Fang Yuan's subordinates, however, only had a few hundred beast king poison-beard wolf kings. But Fang Yuan was not shocked, instead he was happy, smiling lightly. As expected, they could not hold it in anymore. The Wind Wolf King's intelligence far surpassed other wolves, but it was still a wild beast, it could not compare to humans. Against other wolf groups, Fang Yuan had to charge himself. But against the Wind Wolf King, Fang Yuan created such a formation, luring the Wind Wolf King to charge. Swoosh! The charging Wind Wolf King suddenly opened its mouth and spat out a three-leaf wind blade. The wind blade flew up, breaking through the wolf group and carving out a path of blood, slashing towards Fang Yuan. Careful! A Gu master on the mound could not help but shout, the others' hearts were in their throats. Fang Yuan did not move, only when the wind blade was about to reach him did he maneuver the hump wolf to dodge, easily dodging it. The green wind blade brushed past his body. Expert! Fang Yuan's fearlessness in the face of danger and his calm demeanor made the Gu masters think of this term. Fang Yuan willed, several poison-beard wolf kings were already prepared, they ran over and formed a battle formation, blocking the Wind Wolf King. The Wind Wolf King was fast, had strong attacks and sturdy defense, it was stronger than any of the poison-beard wolf kings. But no matter how it charged, it could not break through this obstacle. Fang Yuan used his exquisite command to win against the strong, restraining the Wind Wolf King until it could not do anything but howl in anger. Terrifying! The mighty Wind Wolf King has been completely toyed with by this man. This person's beast enslavement skill can match Jiang Baoya, Yang Ping and Ma Zun. Another top-tier enslavement path expert has appeared in Northern Plains. If the wolves under his command were several times stronger, he could even fight against a small and medium-sized tribe by himself. Who is this person? He looks quite old. Gu Guang looked at Fang Yuan manipulating the Wind Wolf King, feeling dazzled and awe. Everyone shook their heads, making guesses. This gave Fang Yuan another layer of mystery. It's about time. Fang Yuan muttered. He had the entire battle situation in his hands, seeing that the Wind Wolf King wanted to escape, he knew it had lost its fighting spirit. Rank 3 Wolf Enslavement Gu, go! Fang Yuan willed, his only rank 3 Wolf Enslavement Gu flew out, turning into a light smoke that enveloped the Wind Wolf King. The Wind Wolf King howled, its soul struggled and actually held on to the light smoke, not submitting to Fang Yuan's pressure. Humph! Fang Yuan's eyes shined with a sharp light, he had 100-man soul, he was not afraid of this contest of souls. As expected, the Wind Wolf King resisted for a while, losing and submitting to Fang Yuan. This person's soul is so strong, he might have 100-man soul. Someone exclaimed. With such enslavement path attainment, it is not strange for him to have 100-man soul. Someone retorted, like Jiang Baoya, Yang Ping, Ma Zun, they all have 1,000-man soul. After successfully planting the wolf enslavement Gu, Fang Yuan obtained his first 1,000 Wolf King. The Wind Wolf King howled, the wolf group immediately stopped moving. The noisy battlefield suddenly quietened down. The remaining 1,000 or so wind wolves changed their allegiance and joined Fang Yuan's side. This way, Fang Yuan's wolf group doubled in size, reaching over 2,400. My luck is good this time, if not for these Gu masters restraining me, I would have to pay an even greater price to subdue this Wind Wolf King. Fang Yuan rode the hump wolf, slowly walking towards the hill. Gu Guang's group held their breaths, this person in front of them would decide their life and death. As Fang Yuan got closer, Gu Guang stepped out of the crowd and covered his chest with his right hand, bowing deeply to Fang Yuan, saying loudly, "Respected expert, I admire and fear your strength. Right now, our lives are in your hands. Whether we live or die, we will listen to you, we have no objections." He, young warrior, I have seen your battle earlier. You are as valiant as a stallion, it reminds me of myself when I was young. Fang Yuan sat on the wolf's back, laughing heartily and looking at everyone warmly. You are the first batch of people I saw after leaving Poison Grassland. I am very happy to be able to return to this land. Don't worry, I, Chang Shan, am not a ruthless person. Hearing Fang Yuan's words, the Gu masters laughed, completely relaxing. Their primeval essence was lacking. If Fang Yuan wanted to kill them, they would not be able to retaliate. Sometimes, humans were more dangerous than wolves. If they met a demonic Gu master, their outcome might be even more miserable. Right now, everyone was rejoicing, they felt that they had met a righteous expert. Benefactor Chang Shan, I am Gu tribe's young tribe leader. You saved my life, please give me a chance to be grateful. Let me invite you to our tent as a guest, I will do my best to entertain you. Gu Guang invited sincerely. Of course, gratitude was a part of it, the other part was because of Fang Yuan's strength. The chance to make friends with such an expert was not only good for Gu Guang, but also for the entire tribe. Gu tribe? Fang Yuan pondered for a while. All right, I have used up all my Yuan stone, I also need to replenish my Gu worms, I need to rest for a while. He expressed his needs in his words, hinting at Gu Guang.